about the dress code. Yeah. Yeah. Are we live?
I was just turned this on. I was like,
Oh,
that's
that's
probably a
fantastic.
good question to start off on.
Dr. Tiffany Schubert, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Should we dress to be sexy?
Absolutely.
How can men dress to be sexy? Give us some guidance here.
Feels above my pay grade.
Gotcha. Yeah. Growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, I remember the modesty movement. I think you and I have talked about it before. So the principle that was offered up as the basically the goal of action in dress was modesty, right? And it's occurred to me over the last 20 years that besides a very small fraction of religious enthusiasts, everyone else is thinking, no, dress is something that's either practical or if I'm going to dress in a way that is going to be aimed at the opposite sex, modesty isn't something I'm thinking about. Looking sexy is. What are your thoughts?
Yes. So I also remember growing up in the early aughts and not necessarily from my own family, but friends and the sort of the general culture was focused on dress as covering up.
Covering up.
Covering up. That was kind of the thing. And again, it was not actually from my own parents, so it's not ever how I thought about dress, but it was in the air.
Sure.
And it seems to me that only both the dress only as right practical, functional, or sexy, kind of on one hand, and then dress as covering up on the other hand, that both of those are missing something really important, that both are a kind of distortion or simplification of what is involved in dress and what we should be thinking about when we put clothes on. It's actually a really complicated process. There's a lot involved in thinking about what we wear and why we wear what we wear and what our dress communicates and the relationship between our dress and our body, between our dress and other people's bodies, between the way that we dress and the particular setting that we find ourselves in. It involves a lot
Mm-hmm.
there. So it makes sense that it's kind of this complicated thing, but it seems that there's this tendency to oversimplify. If I'm just thinking about modesty and covering up, well, then I have, one set of criteria that helps guide how I'm going to dress.
Mm-hmm.
Like one question that I can ask myself when I go to put on, or when I go to a store or whatever. And
Oh,
I don't
there's
think
only
we'll
one
go to the store
question.
anymore.
The only question that matters.
Does this cover enough?
Does this cover?
I mean, you could ask like different questions of does this cover enough leg, right? Or does this cover enough arm?
Right,
To get
right.
a little complicated there.
Yeah.
But
Right. But at the top of the bullet points is, does it cover enough?
does it cover enough?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can like wear a potato sack and be covered, but it doesn't speak very well of you. Like it's almost like you're ashamed to have a body almost.
Right. And I think at the heart of it, dress is about our relationship with our bodies. We are, to get right, fancy and Aristotelian, we're hylomorphic unities. So we're both a body and a soul. And that doesn't mean we're a soul trapped in a body, right, or contained in a body. We're a unity of soul and body. And in conservative spaces, and maybe just in kind of the modern world in general, I'm not sure, we tend to favor privilege, right, the soul or the mind over the body. Kind of embarrassed by the fact that we have a body or inconvenienced by our own body. We're just in this really weird relationship with our own bodies. And actually, I want
Constant maintenance required by our
yes,
body.
by our bodies.
Remember that
It's
Seinfeld
annoying,
bit
isn't it?
where he said, if I were if I were to do it again, I don't know that I would ever buy an earth body.
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Kind of
Yes,
daily
exactly.
maintenance and care.
It's
Yeah.
a lot. But like, really, I have to feed myself again
Again.
or my
Yes.
children again. They need
Right.
to eat 3 times a day.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So it is a lot of work. And
Mhm.
yeah, I do actually, I think, want to take back the kind of modernity comment there and just say, I think that's probably always been the case for human beings. Right? That there's this awkward relationship that we have with our own bodies, or probably, basically right, probably since post Eden.
We have a lot of high regard for saints who seem to have genuinely disregarded their bodies, right?
Yes.
And maybe some of that is hagiography, right? That like, okay, all of us can talk about how Saint Francis called his body brother ass, but have we engaged with it on a more serious level than that? Perhaps we haven't,
Mhm.
right?
hmm Or the philosophical tradition, right, where you have the body is a kind of prison.
Mm-hmm.
That's the Platonic idea.
Mm-hmm.
Even get Boethius will talk about the body that way too.
Okay.
Like, so kind of
Where does
continues
the
into the
go?
Middle Ages.
Where does the formulation "ghost inside the machine"? When does that begin? Where does that crop up?
I think Descartes.
Descartes.
That's kind of that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So right, that's like the hylomorphic unity is not the ghost in the machine. That's not an Aristotelian position.
Mm-hmm.
That's not. It's like, yeah, right. That the body is this sort of mechanical appearance thing that is not actually my true self,
Mhm.
right? And it's something that I just sort of exist to feed, do maintenance on over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually part of who I am. So we have all kinds of reasons, philosophical, religious, cultural, that create this awkward relationship with the body, the sense of not being at home in our own bodies.
Mhm.
And of course, aging and bodies changing and things like that can also contribute to that.
Even the most athletic, properly cared for 18-year-old body cannot be everywhere its mind might imagine it, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. The mind has the kind of roaming freedom,
Mm-hmm.
capaciousness to take in so much, and the body can feel like this. Well, and genuinely is a limitation in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it does, and there is some justification. It's understandable that we can have this strange relationship with our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
but we are embodied creatures, and Christ took on a body and has a body perpetually. Which I just always think is just kind of wild.
Yeah.
I get that the human body is now right forever integrated into the nature of the Trinity
Yes.
is crazy.
Yeah.
It's really, really crazy. So that points to this elevation of the human body, and that part of being a Christian is coming right to accept the body, but coming to learn to be at home in your body. Because that's what it is, right? It's a home. It's not a prison. Right? It's a home. Yeah,
And even though, and those limits are like the walls of the house, right? They are limits. They are divisors between what is here and what is not.
Mhm.
But if we think of them as, if we realize what the walls of a home do for us, perhaps we could be a little bit more comfortable with the limitations. What do the limitations of the body do for us? Would we somehow be lost without those limitations?
Yeah, like if I had 8 arms,
Or as many arms as
maybe
you pleased
as
in a
many
given
arms as
moment?
in a given moment. Yeah,
Or if we could be anywhere at the with a thought, would that somehow not serve us well in our fallen state?
yeah. Would we ever be anywhere? Right? Would you? I was thinking about the rapidity of the mind and the way it can flip back and forth and back and forth type of a thing. Yeah. What if the body matched that
Right.
kind of flightiness, right? If you were just sort of
Mm.
jumping around and jumping around and jumping around, yeah, you wouldn't actually be in a place
Right.
with
Right.
these particular people. Right? Like I can be having a conversation with particular people. My body is here. My mind can be
right.
totally
My
in a
mind
totally
can
different
wander.
place. Yeah, my mind can wander. So
What
yeah,
chaos
my
would ensue if our bodies wandered as well.
around.
God, I was just talking to him.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, he's in Africa. Damn it.
Yeah, I actually really love this idea that yeah, our bodies enable us to be right fully like in a place, to be fully incarnate, right? And not just present to our own bodies, right? But to be incarnate in time and space, and to be
Right.
kind of anchored and located and, and held down.
I remember as a 12-year-old thinking, if someone gave me the choice between being able to teleport to wherever I wished or have no physical need for sleep, which would I choose?
Oh,
Hmm. What did you choose?
Well, I was not, in fact, given the choice in reality.
Probably for the best.
Probably.
Can you imagine 12-year-old with
Yeah,
either of
yeah,
those
yeah.
powers?
A 12-year-old with no need to lie down and rest for a little while.
Oh, your
Yeah.
poor parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I were to do it today, it would be the teleportation side of it, right? Yeah, sleep.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, Psalm 127. I always find it inspiring. To those whom he loves, the Lord gives sleep. I'm like, man, we should pay attention to that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a gift.
it is a
It is a
gift.
gift.
Yeah,
That is.
yeah. But at 12, I think I was, I didn't really have too many other places to go. So I think I was probably leaning towards the no sleep option. I can play Age of Empires all night.
That is like the quintessential childhood dream is to never have to sleep.
Mhm.
Just stay awake forever and forever. Which is a kind of desire to escape the limits of the body too.
Mhm. Right.
And I can understand it. Yeah. Like, really, I have to sleep again for a whole 8 hours. If I could just stay up all night, I could get so much work done or like so much personal time to devote to hobbies or whatever.
Mm.
But it is a gift, that act of right
Yeah.
of rest. And then
That shows up in the Iliad too, right? Yeah. Helen of Troy speaking to Odysseus, right? She gives him doesn't she give him this like nectar that will bring about sleep? She says something like, "This is one of the last few pleasures I have."
in the in the Odyssey, I think she's like
Oh,
slipping.
is it the Odyssey? I thought it was the Iliad.
I,
I thought it was like when Odysseus sneaks into the city and has a
there? Okay.
conversation with
Yeah.
Helen.
In the Odyssey, she's doing something to people's drinks,
Mm.
like doctoring
Oh,
their
yeah.
drinks there. That maybe it induces a kind of forgetfulness of sorrow. I think that's what that is there, which is also pretty problematic. Like, you
Right.
just want to exist in a place there's perfect bliss.
No regrets.
No regrets. Right. Which she has reason to have a lot of regrets. Menelaus has reason to have a lot of regrets. Everybody in that scene, right, has some reasons to have a lot of regrets. But yeah, you're wanting to like escape from yourself, from your particularity, from those things that confine you.
Mm.
Not just the body there, but you wanting to escape from your past
Right.
there.
Right. Escape from your own particularity.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a nuanced temptation, but I suppose a very real one.
I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is, especially if you're full of regret.
Mhm.
Right? You wish that your story could be different. You want to rewrite the story or get out of your story,
Right.
right, into somebody else's story or just out of story altogether.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose that's one of the signs of oncoming middle age is when you have the wherewithal to say, "Ugh, my story could have been different." Right? When you're in your 20s,
Right.
you're still kind of making your story, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The main characters are still being introduced.
That's right. Yeah, I think that's why you get Augustine writing the Confessions in middle age, or even Dante setting Commedia.
Mm.
It's midway through the journey of our life.
Right.
That you've had enough of the story. And there's still a lot of story to be written, but you have enough of it, right, to kind of see the contours of it.
Right, exactly.
In a way, whereas it's really hard when you're young.
Right. You don't even know
Actually impossible.
Right. What's the stage? What's the audience? What's
Right,
the drapery? What's the
Am I a main character in my own story? I don't know. Who knows? I mean, I'm just a side character.
Yes.
Yeah. All of that's kind of up in the air.
Right. Remember after summer camp one year, one of my counselors said that she had had a conversation with her mother in which her own mother had said, I think you're kind of an abider. And you're like, well, what do you mean? Well, so I don't think you're much of an agent. You're there. Like, my God,
Whew.
what does that really do for 23-year-old, right?
Own mothers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
There's a book to be written.
There's a book.
There's a book to be written.
There's some trauma there.
Yeah, there's a book to
There's
be
some
written.
trauma to capitalize
Temptations.
on, and
You could just do like a nationwide survey, just like send in the things your mothers have said to you and like just put it all in a book. Oh my God.
Goodness.
sounds just the idea of that sounds traumatic.
Who cares? It'll sell.
Right?
We'll see you in Cabo off the profits of this book. The trauma's already happened. Yeah.
Might as well capitalize.
Might as well profit off of it.
That's great.
All right, to all y'all listening, we came up with this idea. None of y'all are allowed to go do it. We're going to get to it eventually.
Speaking of mothers and dress, I think for a lot of people, the relationship that they have with dress, the narrative, right, that we create around the way that we dress can really be shaped by your parents, but by your mother. So it's one of the things one of these memories I have from college that has stuck with me. I had a roommate who was trying different shirts on, and I thought, oh, that looks fine. And she said, oh no, I can't wear this because my mom said that if I wear a shirt like this, right, I will look like a slut. I was like, I cannot believe, first off, that your mother knew that word, because maybe my mother knows that word. But I'm not sure, to be honest, because I've never heard my mother use any language like that at all.
Wow.
So that was just very shocking to me. And then that your mother would say that to you, is kind of blown away by that.
Right.
And I've just become even more increasingly bothered by it the older I've gotten. Right? Yeah, the more I have a story of who I am, and seeing the way that those kinds of encounters there can shape our stories and our sense of self.
Okay.
There's so much about that's problematic, but one really big thing being that whole relationship with your own body there. Right, what a way to create in someone this disconnect between yourself and your body. There's something wrong with your body as it is, and it needs to be covered up in a special way that maybe other kinds of bodies don't need to be covered up in that way, but your body does.
Because you have good looking parts or not so good looking parts.
Yeah, right. No, yeah, you might have good looking parts. You might actually have assets that other people don't. Right? You're not a flat chested girl, or you're not a small hipped girl, or you don't look like you weigh 90 pounds soaking wet kind of thing. You have curves, which is actually just part of the female body. But you need to cover them up. You need to, hide them.
And do you think, let me try to make a distinction here. Do you think, generally speaking, if you have more, shall we say, prototypically female features, there's increased pressure to cover up more, right?
Yes.
Like if you have shall we say, a more elfish or a more boyish figure, you could get away with things that people specifically women with more specifically female features might get a little blowback. You think that's true?
I do think that's true.
And do you think that's true within, shall we say, society generally, or the circles we run in specifically?
Yeah, I feel very confident about the circles that we run in. I'm not sure about society in general. We might see some sort of similar trends there. But yeah, definitely in the conservative spaces. I was a pretty athletic looking kind of person. A sort of tomboy. Yeah, so there were I never worried about dress. mom never made a big deal about it. My parents never made a big deal about it. But I didn't have that kind of stereotypical feminine shape or figure, whereas my roommates did more so than me. And so it was, yeah, you need to, it's weird, right? Because that's, in some sense, that's desirable shape for a woman. But then in the kind of environment that I grew up in, or really more that, you know, people that I was friends with grew up in, was sort of adjacent to all of this, but not directly in it myself, then that kind of body needed to have special treatment.
Oh, interesting.
It needed
Okay.
to be, yeah, it needed to be hidden. Kept the secret of it, kind of thing.
You may have hips shaped by angels, which means you need a skirt shaped by the Acme Potato Company
That's right.
and
That's
their
right.
potato sacks.
That's right.
Let's keep those angelic hips out of sight.
The angels are over there, you know, it's like they're hand sewing the potato sack. It's a sort of artisanal potato sack. Yep.
I think that would jive with my general reactions, right? Like, I think I could imagine outfits that if someone with, I guess, I'm trying to speak somewhat obliquely here. But if someone with a, let's shall we say, elfish figure, walked in, and then someone with a very curvy figure walked in, and they were essentially wearing the same garment, one might be like, "Oh, she looks nice," and the other might cause a reaction like, "Oh, Jesus," like, woof. I have to look away.
Is it because, so I heard this actually from Chris. He said that he thinks the reason why men are attracted towards curvy women is because we're thinking of as like a father, like who can have the strongest offspring. So he said that's why we're always drawn to the two spots, you know? It makes sense, but I wonder if maybe it's because as a fallen nature, we can't take as much physical beauty because then our mind immediately goes to thinking more about that and less about the person.
Mm.
So it's almost like they're cursed with beauty. That's a weird thing. That's really weird because it's like they should
burden
be
of
able
beauty.
to. Yeah, it's like they actually
Well, your
like
mic's 4 inches
if you
towards me.
if you're like just thinking of like how the Greeks would sculpt people. If you think about it, that's like the archetypal type of beauty. Yet that is since everyone else has fallen, we can't see that as often. But it's almost like that should be praised more than not being at that state, because that's like another higher form of perfection.
Mhm.
That's a weird paradox.
Mhm. Yeah. And we are fallen, and so that makes our embodied condition more challenging, more damaging or toxic or unhealthy. But we're not just fallen. And in the life of the Christian, we're called to undo the work of the fall. And it seems like this is one of those areas where, in fact, actually, we can undo the work of the fall. That we can look at a body and think it's beautiful, and not then immediately want to sleep with that person.
Right. Yeah.
I can look at someone's body and think, wow, that is a really attractive looking body. But I see that person, they're a whole person, right? With their whole right concerns, doubts and fears and loves and hopes and dreams and relationships and career, right? They have that, that's all there. So that's maybe what I'm saying is part of our work of undoing the fall is to grow in that ability to look at other people as that hylomorphic unity. And that's sometimes what we're doing. Right, we look at the beautiful body and we think, yeah, right, I want that. Is where we're divorcing that whole that unity, and we're just sort of looking at the body. That is a physical thing for me, right, to consume, like, or to possess. And also it seems really important to separate recognition of beauty with the desire to possess or conquer beauty. And because that's a weird,
To possess it,
yeah, like
mine now.
it's mine now. I think that's a perversion of the genuine good in our response to the beautiful is not just, oh, I want to admire that from a distance. And it is, I want to be united to that. I see the sunset and I want to like run to the sunset and embrace it. I can't actually do that. Everyone would think I was insane if I actually tried to do that. But like that is that impulse within us. I want to be one with it. So when we see the beautiful in the bodies of other people, we do want a kind of union there. Right? And the perversion of that is possession, right? Like that's mine. I want this. I must have it.
And nobody else.
Right. And yeah. And that in that possession, I'm like conquering it. It's that sense of
It now serves me.
it now serves me, which is so like fallen, humanity. I will take this thing that is good and beautiful, and I will put myself into the position of a god. Right? It will be the thing, right, that feeds me or worships me, or right, that satisfies my own desires.
It's going to be my acolyte.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as opposed to right, worshiping it, and I don't mean in an idolatrous way. I just mean look, right? Yeah,
You love it.
you love it. Yeah, and love involves worship. It involves that like sort of admiration. Like it involves wonder. Like, wow, that is wow. What a beautiful thing right, there is right before me here.
Is your concern that if the modesty principle is given free reign, that essentially we'll get to a point where we think physical beauty can never be worshipped in the sense you describe, where there's no opening, there's no moment of love for a real good,
Yeah,
like putting a curtain around the great works of art.
right. Like
It'll save it from the UV. It'll save it from the UV gaze.
That's right.
Right, you're right. You're right. It will, but we'll miss something really fantastic, which is like, have you ever looked at a really fantastic painting? It does something to you. Am I kind of sorry? Am I tracking your thought or feeling on this matter, or no?
Yeah, I don't know that I've put it to myself that clearly, but I think that's right. Right? That what if you wanted to put drapery around Bernini's Daphne and Apollo, right? Which is a absolutely exquisite sculpture. They're naked. Right?
They're naked.
They are. Spoiler alert. Sorry.
Right.
If you have kids at home,
You have kids at home.
this is the time.
You're not in Rome. It is in Rome, right?
Yeah, it is
It is
in
in
Rome,
Rome.
at the Villa Borghese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the one where like you have like the fingers.
The fingers
fingers
are creating indents in her
in her
skin.
thigh.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
she's literally right, transforming into the tree in that moment. He
Yeah,
captures that moment
yeah.
there. There's a lot that's actually pretty disturbing about that sculpture, but it's incredibly.
But as a
beautiful.
sculpture, it's
As a sculpture, it's just like out of this
peak of
world.
what humanity has produced.
Yeah, I don't know that anyone has reached that level right, that Bernini has. So right, if you, right, to cover it up and there is, of course, an idealization of the body in that kind of sculpture, or in the Greek sculptures, and most of us don't have that kind of idealized body. And there still is profound beauty, right, in the actual particular bodies that people have.
And the fact that we know what the ideal should be means that we've had enough information from the bodies we do have, right? We know what the ideal should be, right?
Well, like we've looked at those bodies.
Yeah. Enough
It's okay
people
to
have
look at
possessed enough of the perfection that when we carve something, we can be like, yeah, this is idealized, but it's based on my observation.
It's coming from from something there.
Something.
Yeah, from something there. Yeah, that you would like that. You never, I'd say, especially right, if you yourself are cultivating that attitude of, right, I have to cover up, right, or I can't look without it turning into, right, immediately that desire for sexual possession, a sexual conquest, or even just a desire for procreation, which is a good desire, but it's also could become a kind of utilitarian thing, right? Like I look at your body, I think, yes, wide bearing hips, good for the bearing of children. Yes. Would you like to go to coffee?
Right, right. After all, the world must be people. So
Right. Yes, which is true, right? Yeah, it must be people. We gotta keep the race going, man. We
Right.
gotta keep the species. We can't fail. We can't fail former generations
Right.
in that way.
And
But-
your hips are gonna help, okay?
Exactly.
Listen
yeah,
to me.
right. That's right. Exactly. But if you are only relating to bodies in that way, yeah, you never have the experience of that kind of wondrous glimpse of the beauty that's there in the body of another, and then also of the beauty that's there in your own body. I think there's something really important, not just about seeing that in other people's bodies, but also you yourself at moments being captivated by your own body.
Because it's a created good.
It's a beautiful thing. That's right. Yeah. And everything that has being has goodness. So even if your body doesn't conform to the ideal in any kind of way, the fact that it exists is a good thing. But then the fact, right, that I think there is real beauty in probably in all bodies, even those that don't conform to the ideal. There's a beauty in the appearance of the body. There's also beauty in what the body allows us to do. The grass, right?
Mm-hmm.
My hands are, like running my hands through moving water.
Right.
I think it's just like one of the most soothing things
Right.
in the world. My body is enabling me to do that. That's amazing. That's a beautiful thing that my body is giving to me. My body is beautiful. And I think not having that kind of relationship with your body it's like a post-Edenic, it's a fallen kind of relationship, right? So you're restoring that. When Adam looks at Eve in the Garden of Eden, it says, bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh.
You're at last.
You're at last.
Yeah, there's a sense of longing behind it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, longing in a non-fallen person. Right?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Uh-huh.
You're at last.
It's non-fallen eros. I think, right? That desire to be united, like to see the beautiful and desire to be at one with it, like is there. In Paradiso, Dante kind of depicts the souls who are there. So the souls of the blessed, they're full of erotic longing for their own bodies. Right? They're so excited about the resurrection of the body. Like they just can't wait for that to happen. But then he has this really interesting twist. They also long for the resurrected bodies of others. And that they have this eros for other people's bodies. And it's not sexual, right? They don't want to sleep with everybody. That's the kind of stuff that, in hell we would see, but they do.
And that's the only way our modern prism can take it. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, we hear, I have an erotic longing for the bodies of other people. And you're like, okay, I see. I know what that means. Exactly. Yeah. And you're like, okay, you want to go horizontal with somebody. I think. So that's the the desire for sex is not in itself perverted, right? But yeah, to immediately assume that because I have this longing to be united to the bodies of other people and to admire the bodies of other people and just for people to be embodied means that therefore I want some kind of sexual consummation with a person. Right? It's a very narrow understanding of our relationships with our own bodies or our relationships with other people's bodies. But I think that affects not just the modern culture in general, but it does in fact affect the more kind of conservative religious spaces too, because we do in those spaces tend to think of, if I notice that this woman has beautiful curves, or if we tend to kind of more focus on women, but say, right, if I also notice that this guy has broad shoulders, and and not a beer belly, then that immediately means that I want a sexual relationship with that person, right? And there's a way of, again, I think there is a way of looking at, appreciating, and admiring the beauty of the body without it having to lead to sexual desire or desire for sexual possession, right, or conquest.
So in a weird way, it's like the farthest extremes of the secular modern and the farthest extremes of the religious modern sort of agree that if the body is revealed, sexual desire for consummation is the only possible result.
Yes.
And maybe that's what you object to and why you actually have a bone to pick with both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, I think that's right.
It's because, guys, you actually agree on the premise.
Hmm?
And I'm here to question the premise.
Yes. Yeah, you agree on the premise that body, especially female body, equals sex. Okay. That's what it means. Like that's how you interpret that data, right? Like that's the meaning, that's the narrative, that's a story that you put on that. And yeah, I think that the intense focus on covering up is just as much a form of sexual objectification as the more obvious, explicit forms of sexual objectification that we see in our culture.
Right.
Because in both cases, it's that body is for sex. And so right, either we kind of celebrate that, right, or embrace it, or like feed the narrative of objectification,
Right.
or
The hottie.
we gotta cover it. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Which is
Cover
not
it,
great.
and the only person who would ever uncover it is the person who is going to possess it sexually.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Mhm.
Whoa,
That's really interesting.
that's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially because I don't know. I always feel bad about girls in today's society because it's like, if let's quote unquote say they just wear less than what's approved by other people or even friends, then they automatically think, well, they're trying to go for something or get some sort of attraction. But in reality, maybe she's just trying to get a good tan on a nice sunny day. And then it's like, well, then they're put in this box of saying, oh, they're a bad girl because now everyone else is going to look at them that way. But really, it's actually the people looking at her fault, not the girl's fault. But it's like, it's so construed in our minds. It's like, oh, you can never see a body ever unless you're married to them and it's your wedding night or whatever. It's like, yeah. But then like what you're saying, it makes you hyperfixate on that always, and you're not thinking about the person really.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that is the mistake that traditional Muslim cultures have run to, right? That a woman must be covered up to and it's so obvious because it's so extreme, right? I mean, covered up to the extent that the only things that are not covered are that which he needs to move about, right? Like the eyes and the feet. It's extreme, and that brings out something obvious about the outlook.
Yeah, but the same impulse, I think, is there in other conservative religious spaces.
Okay.
And there may be some secular spaces too that do this. I'm just not as familiar with those, but I think it's the same impulse. And I like your point that it's so obvious when it's that extreme.
Right. When it goes covering the face,
When
covering
it's
the
totally covering the face, like with the potato sack, but like
yeah.
hardcore potato sack. Right?
Hardcore.
It's completely totally covered there.
Right.
Potato sack and a
Yeah,
pillowcase.
yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Even the potatoes are like, geez, we got more exposure to air than this,
That's
you know?
right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's okay. So that's one side of the extreme. All right, but help me out with your thoughts on the other side of the extreme. I have been to nightclubs, and I've been on dance floors in nightclubs, and I have had the experience of thinking to myself, like, in all honesty, as a man of integrity, I don't think I can actually touch that person because my experience has been like there's too much uncovered, right? I mean, like, and maybe that's a recognition of my own fallenness. Maybe that's a recognition of my age. I was in my 20s, of course. It does seem as if there's a way in which, as not myself, but another commentator said, is that especially women in our modern age can sort of set off a hand grenade of arousal, right, in the way she dresses. When people say that to me, it jives with my own experience of thinking, golly, I don't know how I could interact with her without that arousal along those, what you call, like, a narrow channel, right? And that does seem to be a reality in my own experience. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah. Okay. I got a lot of thoughts here. So I'm not trying to deny the reality of your experience.
Okay. Lay it on me.
But
Deny away.
I'm sure, right? Yeah, that is your experience, but like that actually happened. I'm not trying to gaslight you here.
Right.
But I think so. One response to that can be, so the girl just needs to cover up because that's the problem.
Mm.
Maybe I'm not sure if I kind of want to put that aside for just a second.
Okay, let's put
There.
that aside.
Yeah, let's put that aside. And instead, right, what if we dealt with this kind of post-fallen response? Well, in a couple of ways. Right? First off, you're noticing that she is beautiful, and you're noticing her body is not sinful.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Right. That in itself is not sinful. So I think that's kind of an important step there.
Yep.
But then I say, I notice her, and then maybe it goes into this sort of arousal. That may not even be sinful either, actually. Then it goes into she is beautiful. Something in me, right, is responding to that, and then I want, right, to right, possess or right, consume or to take. I think that that we can actually you're talking about, right, you're talking about a man, so we can use gendered language, but it's not necessarily just it's not just necessarily a one-way kind of street there. But let's say, I think that the men can actually learn how to still treat that woman as a whole human being. You could put it like very this sounds very like spiritual, right? Or very
Woo-woo.
very holy. But I think you can, like, right, Jesus interacts with prostitutes, which is a whole separate issue. But there's a way of still treating a person who is dressing in a way that, or maybe just in society's norms, strikes us as overly sexualized, that they are still a person. And so I think you can still respond to them as a full and complete and whole person.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly gets easier as you get older. Right? It's something you work on. So it's not that I'm saying, and then in that moment you should have been able to, do all of this instantaneously.
Right. She too is the daughter of God.
Yeah. But the like immediate gut response of, or the knee-jerk response of, oh, well, the solution here is that she should cover up, is something that I would want to push back against. And, and maybe again, I'm not actually conceding this, but I think, right, if I were to concede that, I would least want to also add or emphasize that you should learn to disassociate that immediate connection between, right, the female body and sex, but also then even to learn to gaze upon the beauty of the body and admire the beauty of the body and then say, okay, but I'm going to move on. Right? This is not actually right now. This is not for me to, you know, like possess or conquer, or even, you know, the actual proper response, right, which is enjoy and wonder at and, you know, and be united to. This is not. That's not the right response for this person in this moment, kind of a thing. I think that actually is part of the
Because
response.
the setting is too public, because you are strangers.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and is that her intention or her purpose? Is that I don't know. I don't. It's really hard to obviously know the hearts of other human beings,
Mhm.
right? But just because she's dressed in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean that she's communicating, I want to sleep with every man in this club, kind of thing, right? I mean, maybe if she is, there's probably a lot of trauma and sexual abuse in her past that's leading her to that kind of attitude and relationship with her own body.
Right. Not guaranteed, but certainly.
Not guaranteed,
But-
but highly probable.
Yeah.
Yeah, highly probable there. Okay. Yeah, so I would, guess I'd just want that perspective to, at the very least, be part of the conversation. That, like, that the whole, you know, grenade thing, our response to the grenade, I guess, is, I don't actually know how to continue the metaphor there, but our response, right, to that potentially explosive body, right, is to say, okay, well, it's clearly her fault for dressing in this way, and she's making me have this kind of response. It's a kind of denial of agency.
Condemnation comes too quick.
It comes very quickly. That's right. Yeah, it comes very quickly, and the solution comes very quickly too. And it's normally targeted at her, right, at the woman. Okay, she needs to cover up, and that's going to be the solution. Right. And let's say that was the right and, I don't know, moral response. But one problem with it is it just actually doesn't.
Say more.
It doesn't solve the problem of lust, that is the tendency to objectify, the desire to consume or possess, you know, the beautiful that we perceive. Covering up actually doesn't solve that problem. I think it puts a band-aid on it sometimes, as in you think like, oh, I have now solved and conquered my lust problem.
Because I put the cookie jar back up on top of the fridge.
Yes, I put the cookie jar on top.
I can't get to the cookie jar.
Right. So it's fine. Okay.
Right.
I think a lot of times what happens is that you may not even think that you actually are still like you're still experiencing lust, right? It's still there. Right? But I think the one
it's there, but you've assured that it's more dormant.
that's more dormant.
That
Yeah.
might be another circumstance.
It doesn't like awaken your body as intensely, maybe.
Yeah. Again, speaking from my own experience, I know that growing up, my family would go to the beach every summer. And I know as a teenager, the first day on the beach, in late June, like, whoa. And then like by late August, you're like, yeah, people are out, sunbathing.
Yeah.
So
that's right. Yeah. They're in bikinis.
And there was a normalization
Less if you're in Europe.
Say what?
I said less if you're in Europe, right?
Less if you're in Europe.
Less than.
Yeah. Less.
But that's right. Yeah. There's a normalization, right? This is the social norm.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that crazy or out there or noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
And you can accustom yourself to it, and you can also learn to treat those people as full human beings.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not encouraging or saying that everyone or anybody, right, should run around nude. Certainly not in a like modern American context. So that's not. That's what I'm saying.
And if someone were to say to you, well, why not? I mean, obviously, with these 6 inches of snow that we have on the ground right here in Lander, Wyoming, there are other practical considerations.
No, and some of it actually, honestly, is practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is practical. That it's just there's a kind of ridiculousness to that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Within our society, there would be actually right. It's considered a kind of sexual assault to expose yourself in public in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like sending dick pics is it's a form of sexual assault, right? I have not consented to seeing that,
Right.
right? That part of your body. Now, if we were in tribal Africa, there are some cultures where people are like basically right fully and completely nude, and it's not a it was not sexual assault there. Right? It's just so it's so relative, right? It's so contextual. It's so dependent on our social norms, type of a thing, right? But if you're just if all the time you're looking at the nude body, right? Yeah, I think it's akin to your experience at the beach. Right? You just accustom yourself to it, right? You're not like, oh my gosh, right? I can't believe that this is happening. I'm so shocked and overwhelmed. And again, yeah, I did not consent to the full
To this level of view.
display of
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I didn't want to see
Right.
that much of you right now, type of a thing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
I didn't ask to be in this gallery of the museum.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah. Consent is a pretty important aspect, right? Of like because there, at least right in our society, in our context, that kind of nudity is pretty coded in terms of like it's coded sexually, taking off of your clothes. Now, if you're at a beach in Italy and at a nude beach there, I don't think it is coded sexually, right? It's not that everybody who's there and doesn't have a swimsuit on, right, is saying, I would like to have sex with everyone at this beach. Right? I don't think that's what's going on there. But in our context, in our society, yeah, taking off all of your clothes and running around. Actually, it's coded really right into at least two ways. It coded as I would like to have sex with you, or there's actually something mentally wrong with me. Right. Like,
Oh yeah.
right. Like I'm not well. And so that would lead me to violate social norms in this, such an extreme way. So it's kind of right. So it's coded in that way.
Right.
Right, for us. Yeah, so that's why I think that would kind of
Okay. It
wouldn't-
seems to me, correct
not
me if I'm wrong. But it seems that your overarching take here is that essentially in 21st century, typically American culture, nudity or the approaches to it are essentially coded as actively sexual. Do you think that's the underlying problem? That nudity can occur in other cultures and it's not actively sexual, and therefore it seems to me you're saying not really a problem, but here nudity is basically relegated to the realm of active sexuality. And it appears to me that you're saying in other cultures, it's essentially not. It's relegated to responding to the demands of the weather, right? If you live in a very tropical climate, actually, a little more skin exposure is kind of more comfortable, right? Or if you're at the beach in Italy, maybe it's not absolutely necessary, but it's kind of more enjoyable.
I think that some Europeans do see us Americans as very prudish with respect to the body and with respect to the naked body. So when I was right after I graduated college, I went to South Korea for a year to teach ESL, and I went to a Korean bathhouse. And Korean bathhouses, at least the one I went to, they're gender segregated. So there's this one was initially gender segregated, and then after you went to the male and female spaces, then you came back together and were reunited. There's probably something deeply metaphorical going on there, but you would go into the female bath, and everyone was naked there,
Mhm.
and it was kind of traumatic for for little homeschooled, recent college grad American me to wrap my brain around, even right, just being in a sex segregated space
Mhm.
where all of the women were naked.
Yep.
And no one cared. All these women were totally comfortable.
So you had
with their
everything from
bodies.
adolescents all the way to people in their, I assume, 70s.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yep. There were older women who were there. And it took me a really long time to be able to actually work up the courage to be able to, right, to
join them,
go in, to join
in the
them.
custom.
Yeah, to join in this social custom. I think it's I can't do this. This is terrifying, vulnerable in a way that, and I'm not used to being vulnerable, exposed, maybe wrong, possibly because of, reasons.
So that last part is interesting.
Conservative religion.
Yeah, that last part is interesting. Like, why would it be wrong? Since again the channel we've been talking about, active sexuality is not really part of that context, but it still seems wrong. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like that that's kind of strange. Yeah. I was really not at home in my own body. I think that was a really big part of it. And these women, they were. And South Korean women have there's a whole lot of body issues, a whole lot of intense pressure to conform to certain stereotypes, and a whole kind of really toxic beauty industry. Yes, related to weight, to like very precise physical appearances. This is how we want you to look, things like that. But this was not that. Right? This was just a more traditional kind of practice where you would just enter into the bath, and it's like once I did, it was a very lovely experience. It was very relaxing and very soothing, and wow, okay, this is just a different way of relating to my body.
Interesting.
And obviously that was a sex segregated space, and so there's differences and complications that come when we're dealing with both of the sexes together there. But having public spaces where the naked body is seen and displayed is not that unusual in human history.
Historically.
Yeah. And not that unusual in, even in different cultures either. And again, there may be some places, right, in modern American culture where that's happening that I'm just not aware of, but it was definitely not happening in my evangelical homeschool community. We were not regularly going to the baths. I didn't even really know that there were.
I was told one time I'm buttoned up. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're kind of puritanical Americans. I love it.
I wonder if people with obvious physical flaws could actually experience some level of healing if they were in these societal contexts, right? Like, you're missing a leg, your bones are deformed. I mean, all sorts of things. If nudity, perhaps gender segregated, maybe that's part of it. But I wonder if people with pretty obvious physical flaws actually come to terms with it in a healthier way if they're just part of a group of people with normal bodies and everyone can see each other.
Yeah, what does it do to a society or people where the only naked bodies you see
are perfect?
And that could be in the sculptures, which, I mean, let's be honest, right? That's not what most modern Americans are not looking at Bernini. But if you're looking at porn,
Sure.
You're looking at the bodies that are displayed there, this sort of perfected or like seemingly perfected bodies. And those are the bodies that are beautiful. Those are the bodies, even just from a sexual perspective, right? Those are the bodies that like deserve sex or that you know
Those are the bodies that are
should
allowed to
have
be
sex with.
uncovered.
Yeah, those are the bodies that are allowed to be uncovered. Everybody else's body is like covered,
Right.
right? Because most of the women in that bathhouse didn't conform to any kind of standard, vision of beauty.
Right.
It wasn't like, oh yes, right now I'm walking amongst Greek sculptures here. That was not that was not
That was
that was
not your
not
experience.
that was not the experience. But I also wasn't thinking, oh my gosh, I'm so ugly. It was wow, okay. This is a really different relationship with the body that I don't have.
Sure.
And I didn't have, even by the right, well, certainly by the end of the experience, it was only like one time, right? So
Mm.
it wasn't as if that one moment then helped me be at home in my own body.
Sure.
But they were at home in their own body. Yeah, what you were just saying there, that's just like very personal for me. My father has rheumatoid arthritis, and a very severe case of rheumatoid arthritis that he has suffered from since like his late 20s and his 30s, and it has really deformed his body.
Mhm.
And so he has this really difficult relationship with his own body. I'm not at home in my own body, I feel betrayed by my body. And
Right.
simply
It cannot accomplish the things
it cannot
I
accomplish the things
desire.
that I desire, yeah, at all. And simply being in a culture where maybe the nude body or the diversity of the nude body was on display in those kind of ways, that's not going to fix his physical limitations, right? It's not going to suddenly, right, allow him to be able to do things that he wants to do. But maybe it would show him and other people, or be a kind of like revelation that, right, there's still something about this body, right, that's beautiful, or that our immediate response to that kind of body shouldn't be, let me turn away from it in horror, whether it be, right, my own horror, right, or the horror of other people. That was profoundly moving, actually, for me.
Hunchback of Notre Dame
that.
experience.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or the Beauty and the Beast experience.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Yeah, the revulsion at the ugly. Yeah.
Because he still has it's a hylomorphic unity. Right? He's still the body and the soul, and there's still something about that body that, right, is allowing him to be in this particular place and particular relationships that he has with those people, right, in this moment. And that's not to deny the real pain and suffering involved in disability. So you're not having to gaslight yourself into thinking this is great and fine, but still that there's a dignity here, an inherent dignity in this body.
Right. Well, and it would be good if we could see earlier in life, and perhaps many of us do, the way in which our own limitations shape and perhaps improve our personality, our soul. Perhaps we have a humility or compassion, empathy, or a farsightedness, detachment, all sorts of virtues that are hard to get from a normal, successful life, right? But if it could become obvious to us the way in which our limitations do perhaps improve the soul side, perhaps that would be helpful. Yeah.
I think there's something to that because I've noticed that a lot of the women I knew in school that weren't like quote unquote the hottest girls in school, they had remarkably amazing personalities. It was almost like they understood that there's more to them than just how they look, so they really just, I think, lived into who they thought they were as a person. And it's almost like you start to see their beauty in their body more through that. Like I guess like when you notice
Go ahead, go ahead.
I just was thinking about like their face, and you can see someone's personality come through their face. You start seeing a lot more of the beauty from them. And it's like if they are ashamed of themselves, they kind of hide away, and then you think less of them. You're not like drawn to them. But I just kind of like to put on your point of like the maybe the disappointment or something someone has about their own body may actually be a benefit to them if they can see.
I think it's an opportunity for that. I don't know that everyone takes the opportunity,
True.
right? Some people do.
Yeah.
Bitterness, right? There's a reason we have the word. It's because it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Some people do sink into bitterness. That happens as well.
Yeah, and those women that you're describing there, to me, the word that came to mind there was freedom. There's a kind of freedom in being themselves and not trying to conform to some sort of expectation. And for women, the expectation to be beautiful and to look a certain way is so strong, and it can become all consuming. And that's not to say that every beautiful woman feels that way. That's a overgeneralization that seems just probably on its face false. But those women who have that kind of beauty and confidence and freedom in who they are, right, and that radiates out into the world and out even right into the expressions of their face and right manifested in the body there, aren't conforming to that. They're free to be fully who they are, and that is a really beautiful thing. And I think we want that because you could have the woman who doesn't conform to the conventional standards of beauty, who maybe is sort of more plain by those standards, or maybe even kind of ugly looking by those standards, who is consumed by that and feels profound insecurity about it because that messaging, that story is so very strong. Like, right, if I don't look a certain way, then I'm not valuable, I'm not worthwhile, kind of thing. And so it can create that insecurity there. Right. But to be in the position where you are comfortable and confident in who you are, and you're not defined just by how your body looks, right, or how it conforms to a certain image. Yeah, is I think profoundly freeing and really living into that highly morphic unity. Yeah, it's not just the beauty of the body. Right? Like if I just put makeup on and put on a nice dress, which does help, right? Or it can and contribute to the beauty, right? But because you're a union there, you want that union of the self and the soul that's confident in who you are. That does I'm worthy. I'm I'm interesting. I have gifts and talents, right, that I can bring to the world in a way.
Mm.
And I am comfortable in my body, right? And I love my body, and I'm grateful for what my body can give me, and I can see and recognize and celebrate, the beauty of my body. Like that kind of union of the self and union of your appreciation for the fullness of yourself. I think that seems pretty Edenic to me. That seems to be right, trying to get us back to that pre-fallen relationship, right, with our bodies, or right between our souls and our bodies.
Because it's almost like in that kind of, when someone kind of understands how to live like that, they also, let's say if they're really beautiful and attractive and their personality is still coming through, like even if like they're on the beach, it's interesting, but as a guy, I don't think probably as much about their bodies. I start thinking about them because it's like they're not even thinking of their own body. And it's almost like it's the girls that do think a lot about themselves in that way. You can kind of pick up on it, the way they move themselves, the way they're like interacting with you. then your mind starts going there right away, and you're not thinking about them as a person. It's like if someone like, let's just think like the prettiest girl you know is in a bikini, but she smiles at you. You're not actually thinking about what she's wearing. You're thinking about responding to her smile.
Yeah, you see the fullness of who she is,
Yeah,
right? And so you don't just think female body, sex.
right.
Yeah, and I think there is a way, and for the right for the Christian to cultivate that response to a woman or a member of the opposite sex, regardless of how they're dressed. I think that's actually a call, a kind of responsibility, maybe even right that we have as Christians is to say, regardless of what that person is wearing, they are still created in the image of God, and so I still need to see them that way.
Hmm.
Um, and for a woman who's kind of giving off that kind of energy, again, I would just reiterate that there's probably a lot of trauma behind that, and probably a deep misunderstanding of the value of her own body. That she's not, it's highly unlikely that a woman is dressing or behaving in a way simply because she wants to sleep with as many people as possible,
Right.
because that's like what she really, really wants. It could be, right? It definitely could be. But again, I think there's probably a lot of trauma behind that and a lot of unhealthy understandings of her own body. So like there's a way that a woman, I think, can internalize the idea that her body is a sexual object.
Yeah.
This is that's a really strong message that women are given. Just as men get the message, female body equals sex, right? That's the mathematical equation there. For women too, you can internalize that female body equals sex. And there's different ways of responding, right, to that equation. But one possible way of responding to that is, well, yeah, yes,
Both halves of the population can assent to that idea.
yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah. Okay, yep, that's I guess that is true. And then maybe I get power that way, or I get some attention that way. I get like some form of love, however paltry, right, and meager that version of love is. Like I get that by contributing to my own objectification there. Okay. So I think it's a really complex situation and really complex motives that are going on, right? When you have women who are right, dressing in that way, or behaving in that way, or like giving off those kinds of signals there. And I think understanding that complexity is really helpful for
Someone could
treating her
accuse her of
as a
being
woman.
complicit in male lust. And in a certain sense, they might be right. But you're also saying if she is complicit, there's usually a long chain of traumas that create that attitude of complicity.
Yeah, and she's been taught that's what she is, right? She is in the conservative world, it would be, well, your body is a temptation to men that you need to cover up, right? You're a stumbling block. You need to help your weaker brother, so you should cover up. So you're like, okay, well, that is what I am. That is what my body is. Or in maybe right more secular spaces, it's yeah, that your body is there for the gratification of another. It is an object
It's a
to be
tool.
consumed,
How
or
well can you use
it's
it?
a tool. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
the way in a patriarchal setting and context that you can get some modicum of power, and so maybe you're going to use it that way. It's
Tiffany, modicum of power. Holy cow. Feels like it can be more than a modicum.
yeah,
I feel like it can lead to great power.
it doesn't tend to empower the woman, no, right?
Not long term.
Not long term, not at all.
Okay, fair enough.
Not at all. Not at all. No, right. It doesn't. I guess there's this stereotype of like sleeping your way to the top, but
But it's never the absolute top.
no, that's right. Yeah, it's always
Yeah, no, you're right. No matter how high you get, someone else always gave you what you have.
Harvey Weinstein gave those. I mean, he had the power. He had the power.
Right, right. He never made a deal of like, hey, if you do this for me, I'll make you the producer at Weinstein Studios.
That's right.
That was never part of the deal.
Never.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, I'll give you sexual agency, and you can make a choice here. You can consent, type of a thing. I say so. It's not. Yeah. It's not genuine power. I think it's a
Right.
sort of.
It's the-
It'd be like kind of desperate grabbing after some illusion of power.
Right.
Because people, human beings, right? We want power. We want agency.
We want agency. Yeah.
We want our choices to matter and to make a difference in the world. We want to like use Thomistic, fancy Thomistic language. Or we want to be secondary causes. Like we delight in being secondary causes. Right? And I think that was kind of part of it, right? You're just like, okay, this is a way for me within the limitations that I've been given to gain some kind of power here. Yeah.
There's a theory that is why some people are addicted to shopping.
Really?
They don't want this stuff. They know they don't need it. But spending money is proof that they make a difference.
Wow.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, that makes a lot of sense actually.
Yeah.
Because can be kind of a power trip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I click that buy button on Amazon, whoo,
Right.
like
then-
agency.
Well, it is agency. And
It
then
is
all
agency.
of a sudden people are working for you. You don't see them. You don't know their name, but Amazon, the third largest company in the world, is working to make you happy. And that's not nothing.
Bow down and worship me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
there's that. Yeah, that's an impulse.
You
And that's
get
the
that to
perverted-
me here in 2 days. Right.
I'll write the worst review.
Right.
I've
I'll
ever
write
seen.
the worst review if this is not on my doorstep in 48 hours or less.
That's right. Yeah. Which is itself, right, a perversion of that, right, desire to be loved, admired,
Yeah.
worshipped, and wondered at. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, right? So I think there is something analogous there,
Mm.
and it's sure right, there are male equivalents. It's just that traditionally women have
What,
been
ordering on
more disempowered.
gunsandammo.com?
Right? Yeah, something like that. Right? Yeah. Right. Well, okay. I mean, and in part, so the male version of I'm thinking here not so much about the shopping thing, right, but more about the sexuality thing. It would just be sexual conquest. How many women have you slept with, or right, who, or right, how beautiful is she, or
Right.
how much porn have you consumed, type of a thing, right? Like that's an expression of sexual prowess and power.
Right.
It's not
How many sexual partners have you had and how hot were they?
how are they? Yeah. And maybe that's about lust, in some way. Maybe it's about like, yeah, right, I just want that body. But I think power and the appeal of power, that libido dominandi that Augustine talks about, right, that like lust for power is so strong. Right? It plays such a big role in all of this. Want to have power over other people. I want to have power over the bodies of other people. The more bodies that I have power over clearly shows the more power that I have,
Right. The more important I
the
am.
more important I am.
Yeah, that was something that Kyle mentioned when he was on the podcast. He's like, yeah, I mean, up to a certain point, you can experience more and more pleasure, but there really does come a point at which sort of the pleasure, your bandwidth for pleasure is maxed out. But he's like, but the bandwidth for power, who's to ever say you have enough? Who's to ever say like you couldn't have more? You could always have more.
Yeah.
There's no bandwidth at which you say, oh, I see nothing beyond this. Whereas even very secular people burn out on pleasure, right? Yeah. There are failed hedonists left and right. But
Yeah. You should be like gods.
Hmm.
Right there. And it's a perversion of the real human desire for power. And in fact, right, we are, sorry, I'm also human. We are stewards. representatives of God. We're made in his image. So that desire for power is part, I think it's part of the fact that we're made in God's image.
Mm.
It's so perverted post-fall,
Mm-hmm.
but we do have dominion
Mm-hmm.
over the world. Again, not in a tyrannical way of abusing natural resources, right, or abusing the animals, what when the kind of like caring cultivation of this world that's been given to us. But then, yeah, we want to say, well, I want it all, or I want to be in the place of God. I want that kind of ultimate power.
Yeah.
And I want to replace him.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And that's a high. Yeah. That's a real high.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can't ever have enough of that. You never get sick of power. Like, oh, no, this is too much power. Yeah. I'll just
Right.
give me more.
Right, exactly. Oh, God, what am I going to do with all this control over the lives of other people? I can't think of
What a
possibly
burden.
how I could improve the world if they would just listen to me.
Baby, and worship me. Then,
Yeah.
then we
If everyone just did what I said.
Yeah, so I think it's just a natural human impulse to seek that power. Then, because in history and in historical setting and in social context, men have had more power than women. I think this is how it's played out. What that desire for power has looked like has manifested itself really differently. There's a more straightforward path for men, or it looks more straightforward, and women have had to be a little more sneaky about ways of acquiring power.
I hope I can give you the compliment of saying you guys might be the only people who could handle the level of nuance.
That's there. But I was thinking about in the Roman tradition, the like evil stepmother or mother who's sort of like conniving to get her
son onto the throne.
Like, okay, I mean, like probably she cares for her son, probably, sure. But that's the way that she gets power. And how often, right, does it turn out that she puts her 8-year-old child on the throne, but really the person who is running the show, running the empire, the kingdom, is the mother. And then the mother and her lover, and then the child grows up and then has to kill the mother and the lover. I mean, it gets really messy, like very quickly, right? But that's like this proxy. That's a way for you to gain that kind of power or agency there. So it's just it's there. It's kind of manifested itself in sneakier ways. And so I think
that is what is said about the Clinton White House, is that Hillary had no official position, but you really couldn't act. I'm not saying the executive branch entirely, and I'm not saying government entirely. I'm saying the White House, the administration. You really couldn't act unless you were taking into considerable account the wishes and moods of Hillary.
Yeah, she's like a Roman matron there.
She was a Roman matron.
I love.
Shout out to Hillary.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot of moral problems there, but yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same kind of.
But it's a classic arrangement.
It's a classic arrangement. Yeah, that's right.
Classic in the sense of classical.
Yes. Maybe both senses.
Both senses.
Yeah, both senses there. Right. Yeah. So the use of sexuality as a kind of attempt at getting power, right, is a part of that. Again, I don't think that it actually in general is successful and gets you that kind of power. And I'm also not sure how common it is. I suspect that it's one of those things that, right, historically has actually happened and then just has been blown utterly out of proportion. It becomes, whoa, she's just using this to, blah, 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 to get what she wants. Or, right, yeah, she's just sleeping her way to the top.
Cleopatra manipulated Caesar.
Therefore,
all the time, throughout all history,
are doing this.
Are always using sexuality as weapons to mean. Tool. Yeah. Tool to get what you consider desirable.
I feel like what at least we're seeing right now in modern days is that they hold it over the man. as like blackmail to get them to kind of pay up. Like, because that's what happens to Trump all the time. All these hideous women keep saying that he slept with them or that he raped them emotionally. And you're like, I don't think he'd ever look at you, first of all. But then they're like, oh, because he raped me. This Jean Carroll lady. Do you know about that
No,
story?
no, I don't.
Okay.
I really don't.
So she was this lady, very weird person. She said that Trump looked at her one time and raped her. And apparently it was an emotional rape.
Hmm.
And she like took it to court and the court ruled that Trump had to pay her $80 million for this. Now, it's never been paid out because we've been fighting it, but this is the kind of like level, and it's pretty common in like a lot of big names is like if you had a sexual problem early on,
Hmm.
they will hold that against you for your entire career. It's like, well, you slept with this person this one time, you're therefore a sexually perverted person, and we can't trust you. And I think that happens a
Well, that
lot.
has an appeal in our uh, Puritan rooted society, right?
Hmm.
I mean, the Scarlet Letter still has this, if somewhat hidden, very real influence, right? That what you did in the dark is the real you,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if you can get after public figures with tales, true or not. I don't know if you can get after people with those types of accusations in other parts of the world as you can
Mhm.
in America.
It's an interesting question. Yeah.
I don't, I mean, what happened between Macron and his now wife, I think was fairly open, and it didn't prevent his rise to the presidency. Um,
It hasn't prevented Trump's.
it hasn't prevented
Uh,
Trump.
and I've actually been disturbed by it, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Say more.
Well, like the Hollywood Access tapes
Uh-huh.
came out, and I, little evangelical me, thought, okay, well, this is not moral at all. It's
Hmm.
a terrible way to talk about women. So this maybe will give people
This is when
pause.
he was describing the amount of shall we call it like complicitness that men can expect from women if
Oh,
you
he was
had
just talking about grabbing women, right?
right, right,
That
right.
yes, yeah, it wasn't even.
Right, but the context was the context was if you're a powerful man.
You can just.
Right, not men on the street.
Hmm?
Yeah. It seemed to me the context was if you're in the sort of situations that Harvey Weinstein found himself in, he had goodies to offer.
So yeah, so gross. Yeah, I I'm sure that false accusations happen, but it's extremely rare. It's extremely rare, and women don't tend to come forward because when they do, they suffer so much social condemnation, so much emotional trauma, sometimes legal trauma, personal trauma. Like for most women, the calculations that they do, they decide it's actually not worth it. It's not worth coming forward to accuse a man of sexual assault, right, or of rape.
Like maybe I'll lose the partner I currently have. Maybe my children will look at me differently.
My
Maybe the
church might turn against me because of, right, I'm sexually experienced or I'm sexually damaged, or we just think, yeah, women, because we have this narrative that women just make up accusations of rape regularly, or if she's saying this about someone who is really well respected, say like about her pastor or about a religious leader, which is the context that I'm kind of most familiar with all of this stuff happening,
Mhm.
well, that's a real threat to the ministry, or that's a real threat to the gospel. So don't want her to come forward and saying these things. So Ravi Zacharias, who is he's a pretty big name in the evangelical world, kind of a apologist. he he died.
Died with a
I
few
think of
other,
natural causes, but
died with a few other things we'll apologize for.
yeah, yeah. It came out that he owned massage parlors and was regularly visiting these massage
Oh.
parlors. He was not getting massages at these massage parlors. But this was
Going
it was
in,
it was
going in for
basically
the
an
old rub
open
and tug.
secret. Yeah, right.
I'm sure his shoulders were also sore. You know what I mean?
His muscles were very loose.
Ay, ay, ay.
But it was kind of an open secret.
Mm.
You don't want to harm the message. You don't want to detract from the gospel being shared, and so you don't say anything, or you don't try to seek justice for those women, wait, if they do come forward. So that's more the norm than women making wild accusations. And again, because the cost is just too high. It's way too high. So I'm sure that it happens, 'cause as it turns out, right, women are human beings too, which means they're fallen, and we can lie and manipulate and all of that. But yeah, even from like a self-interest standpoint, yeah, it's too high.
And you think that's uniquely true in 21st century America, or do you think that's been historically true?
I think it's been historically true.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
the demonization of rape is a
subtext
long
is always
history.
like, well, if you were in that situation, you must have made some bad decisions.
Yeah, it was probably your fault.
To be
Or
available for.
no, men wouldn't behave that way. Apparently, Freud was super insightful in this area, and he was kind of real. Yeah, Freud.
Okay.
Yes, so
I
Freud.
just didn't hear you.
Yeah, he. So he's getting all these women who were coming to him with, hysteria, right? The like 19th century word for it, and he was realizing that it was connected to sexual abuse. Like, right, these women were being sexually abused, but they were being sexually
Inside of a
abused.
marriage by their fathers.
Oh, yep,
both,
right, yep,
everything.
the whole shebang. Like, so he was realizing this connection, but these were wealthy women,
Okay.
socially connected women, right, from important families or well-respected families, and so, well, surely, right, it couldn't be those men. It couldn't be them.
They must have lovers somewhere,
Or
or
they're hysterical and they're making it up. Yeah.
okay. So sorry.
So he realizes he perceives there's a sort of connection here, and I think he actually publishes something even on this. I would, in fact, check me on this. My memory is a little bit hazy here of right, the exact details. And what I can't remember is if he censored himself or if he was kind of more censored by social pressure. Right, to be like, well, it's impossible for all of these very respectable men to be sexually abusing their wives or their daughters. Like, this just can't be happening. So yeah, these women are hysterical and they're just kind of, they're making it up. They've got, penis envy. They just want to be men. It's this whole like, women are kind of sexually disordered type of a thing. Right. But he was seeing, right, the connection that was there. But then there's that social pressure to say, well, this can't possibly be happening in these kinds of families, right? With these respectable men, they wouldn't be doing it, right? So that also plays a role in this too. Like, it's impossible that these guys, right, would be doing.
Okay, so you're saying he was insightful in the sense that the symptoms which would have been covered under the term of the day, hysteria, were related to sexual trauma.
Yeah.
He was
Kind of saw it.
he connected the dots.
Yes.
And then was basically it sounds to me as if you're saying he was forced to sort of twist this explanation together that avoided having to say many women married to many respectable men are being mistreated by those men.
Yeah. And I just can't remember the mechanism of the force there. How internal it was, right? And how versus how external it was there. But yeah, at the beginning of his career, he was realizing how prevalent sexual abuse was and how much that was affecting women. Like, oh, the way that women are behaving when we think women are acting kind of crazy. Interesting. It's actually because they're not because they're it's not because they're crazy. It's actually because they're manifesting a response to trauma, right,
Yeah.
and to abuse. But it wasn't like carried forward into, oh my gosh. So maybe we need to do some real social reform here and address this problem. But it just turned into, we're just going to pathologize women even more, right? And say like there's like a sickness here. There's something wrong with them. They just, they're like penis envy, right? They just want to be men, kind of a thing, is eventually where Freud moved, sadly.
That they don't
They don't have
a sense
crazy.
of agency.
They just want to, right? So they want that,
They
right?
want
And that
that,
makes them crazy,
and
but
we're
they
gonna
can't have that
call
'cause they're
that-
women.
Right. We're going to
Yeah.
call that
Yeah.
penis envy, because clearly if you had one, you'd have agency. And I think that, and I've decided that y'all think that too.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah. Just
I don't even know. Yeah. I don't know how to read. Yeah.
it's kind of wild. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of wild stuff there.
What are your thoughts on the male gaze?
Well, I think it connects to what we're saying, right? It is the mathematical equation of, it's a very simple mathematical equation, and I'm not a mathematician, so right, I need very simple equations. I think I think it is the female body equals 6. And then
It
we're
sometimes does.
yeah, well, but the male body does too. All oh not oh okay. Sorry, I want to take that back. All bodies that have gone through puberty, right, adults are sexual. Again, not to be sexualized or to be objectified or to be consumed or possessed, but just part of being a body is to be sexual.
But puberty means sexual specificity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's so complicated, right? Because actually, right, puberty doesn't necessarily mean then sexual maturity.
Sure.
Just right, because I mean, a little girl she can have her first period when she's 11, which like technically means that she can have a child, but
Right. There's a biological maturity.
right, but
That's different. Right. Something's different than when she was 8.
and she was 8,
Yeah.
right? But in terms of her sexual maturity, right, she's a child, right? She's not actually ready for a sexual experience, right, at all. But once she is a mature adult, then it's right. It's part of being a body, right? Is being a sexual being, and then that I am sexually attracted to other people, or that I want to be sexually attractive to other people, that I desire to have sex, that I enjoy having sex. All of that, right, is tied up in this experience, right, of being a body there. So yeah, you're right that I don't want to say, and the body, right, is just there to be like a Bernini sculpture, right, beautifully gazed upon.
To be beautifully gazed upon.
Right, on a pedestal from a very, very far distance. Yeah, right. To be human is, to be sexual. It's just part of being human, and it's a good thing, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's natural, and that whole like the world must be peopled thing is pretty dependent on that. But the male gaze tends to come from a place of saying, or not saying, but like kind of affirming, right, or articulating, or expressing, or just assuming that the female body is for sex, and I as the man am. I mean, we will often use it in terms of art, right? In terms of like of stories or movies or porn too, obviously, but we tend to use it. We tend to use it right in those kinds of contexts, because it's the director or the narrator or the author is depicting a woman simply as a sexual object, she doesn't have agency. She doesn't really have a soul, right? She doesn't have that full personality. She's not that hylomorphic unity thing. She is just curves. And my camera is going to linger over those curves in a really intense way. I'm definitely not going to linger over the curves of, my male lead in that way.
Sure.
Right. I'm going to linger over her curves kind of thing. Right. And, let me tell you, right, just as a straight woman, I find the male body attractive, and women do. So, right, a framing shot of a guy who's really ripped with his shirt off, like women are noticing that and are responding to that. Right? We're not like, oh yes, I see over there, right, is just
A hylomorphic unity.
hylomorphic here. Made in the image of God.
It's like Hemsworth, he is so hylomorphic.
Right. Yeah. Right. He is so hylomorphic.
So hylomorphic.
Right.
Right. Women notice.
Yeah.
We see, we have eyes, we have bodies, right? And we are drawn to bodies, as it turns out. Right. The male gaze really does center the female body, right? Kind of, yeah, focus on the female body, qua body, in a way that doesn't look at the male body. At least, again, we're talking about like straight male gaze,
Sure.
type of thing there. And that the reason that, at least I think the reason that we so often talk about this with respect to art, to stories and movies and things like that, is because our stories shape our sense of reality. And the stories that we take in, the images that we take in, are shape our sense of what is real or what is meaningful, or they give us a way of interpreting the world. So if our stories come so intensely and so exclusively from the male gaze, that we start to, I guess start is, we haven't started anything, right? This has just kind of been this has been the case for a very, very long time. We make conclusions about the female body, or the female sexual desire and the male sexual desire, and the way that men and women relate to each other. Chaucer has this great moment in The Wife of Bath. It's actually a great moment from The Wife of Bath herself, where she's talking about this clerical tradition, which is deeply, deeply misogynistic, deeply anti-woman. It's a book that her husband, her fifth husband, fifth, sixth, yeah, husband, is reading to her. It's a terrible book, all about how horrible women are and how they've misled men and all of that. And she pushes back against this tradition, and she says she draws an image in from painting, and she says, right, if you look at this image of a man confronting a lion, right, and you've got the man is defeating the lion, and she asks, okay, obviously it's the man. The man has painted himself as the victor over the lion. What if the lion were telling his own story? What would that be like? And was telling her own story. What would that look like, right? What if her gaze and her perspective was directing the camera or framing the story? What would that look like? Interestingly, actually, right, the story that The Wife of Bath ends up telling is this really beautiful celebration of mutual submission between a man and a woman, where they find perfect happiness with each other by surrendering like their desires to each other. Very surprising, right? You think that she's gonna tell a story where women are like, we will take men down and establish a matriarchy and abuse men in the way that we but that's not the move that she makes there. But there's a real power and agency in being able to frame the story, and so I think that the male gaze, right, when applied to to story, right? Story that's written, right, or a story that's that's filmed there. Like that's it has so much power there.
Mm.
Right?
Okay.
Like it's like how many movies have like these like kind of, it seems to me at least, pretty creepy shots of like lingering over the female body. They're like, okay,
Oh,
maybe if Hemsworth was there and also we were kind of lingering over his body, okay, there's some balance
Yeah.
here,
Mm.
but there's no balance. It's just her body there. Like she's sexualized in this really, explicit and kind of distinct way that, the man is not.
yeah. Men and their bodies, their physicality can be sort of made, can be treated humorously in a way that women can't in our culture, right?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's harder, it's more rare. You maybe see movies by women that are doing more of that.
Mm,
You have Bridesmaids,
sure.
something like that. But yeah, I think it's really rare from the the kind of male gaze perspective to do that, which is pretty wild because right, to be embodied is to be there's something like really humorous and kind of ridiculous about it.
Right. Right.
Well, it's not
We get ourselves into ridiculous situations.
all the time with the body, right? The body does weird things and it makes weird noises and it makes weird, has weird smells. Like it just weird.
Yeah. Right. We're
It's like,
not so far removed from the stable as we might wish.
it's right. Yeah, it's like prime comic material.
Right.
And women they've got a lot going on with their bodies, right? You have, you have periods, you've got pregnancy, you've got labor. Like these are intense bodily experiences, right? Where your body is just doing stuff and you're like, holy cow, what's going on here? I don't know.
And you think that's particular? Like, yeah, men have unintentional flatulence, right? But women are particularly subjected to the torments and the blessings of nature in a way that men are not in quite the same way.
There's a regularity to it.
Mm.
They say like every month,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, type of a thing. And then yeah, men don't go through pregnancy, they don't go through labor.
Mm-hmm.
I've never felt more animalistic or like in my body in a way than when I was in labor.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, holy cow, I am not a ghost in a machine.
Uh-huh.
I am a body, and my body is doing some things.
Right.
It's doing some really intense things here that I'm not sure I really, no, not even sure. I definitely am not enjoying this right now.
Mm.
It's not like a
Right.
pleasant
So
experience.
it's odd that you say that. Oh, I'm not a ghost in the machine. That might actually be the moment in which you felt the most, ghosted, right? Where it's like the machine is just doing things. I'm just here.
Yeah, I'm here for it.
But if
Like it has a mind of its own, right? And it's got so much power.
right
And I am,
to draw you and demand that your soul be
You
sort
do
of
this
contained
thing.
in this moment, in this
Yes.
space.
I can't master my body in that, I don't know, philosophical way here. Maybe that's not the right adjective
Right.
there, but just I can't say, all right, body. Now we will retreat into the fortress of the mind in this Marcus Aurelius sense, and like I will be impervious to external forces. My body was like, babe, you're in labor.
Uh-huh.
Like, here we go.
Right. And
I'm
it's
gonna be like, and now I'm gonna philosophize my way out of labor. Right. I will just quote some Plato, and it will stop.
right. And that may be something that most men don't experience
Yeah.
until later in life.
I think that's
Right.
yeah. I think there is something to that. That
I went up to
Just-
block the shot. My son just jumped over me and his hips were right in my ear. Like, how did he do that? I jumped too. Yeah.
women, I mean, have this like kind of more continual reminder of the limitations or the weakness or the even just like the power of the body in there. I don't necessarily mean of like how strong it is exactly, but just how much presence it has.
Sure. It is.
Yeah,
It's
maybe.
it is possible that a man might go all the way to the age of 50 without ever really being inhibited by what his body can't do, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
conceivable. I'm
possible.
not saying that that's the universal
Unlikely,
experience,
but
but
yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
there's some kind of possibility there. Yeah. And right, even if a woman doesn't have a child, which many women don't, still your period it affects you,
mm,
right? I mean, and there's of course varying degrees of that, but just fatigue and pain,
mm,
irritability,
mm,
like those sorts of things that you're just on a like cyclical monthly basis.
right.
Like, oh, I see. Yes, I have a body.
I have a body.
I have a body. There it is.
I'm curious, Tiffany, would you bristle if someone said that women's bodies, there's a resemblance to the, the coming and going of weather, right? That men don't experience and women do experience. Like, yeah, storms roll in, storms roll out. I mean, that's
Like the
been a way to,
hormonal fluctuations.
right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe there's a kind of analogy there, right? It's that rhythmic,
Hmm.
yeah, kind of experience there. I mean, men obviously have rhythm, right? I mean, like the body has rhythm. Breath
Hmm.
is a kind of rhythm. The
Right.
heartbeat is a
Sleep.
kind of rhythm. The movement of the body is rhythm. Sleep is a kind of rhythm there. So just the rhythmic experience of being embodied
Yeah.
is a universal human experience. Uh, but but yeah, right, there is something very inescapable
Hmm.
about the menstrual cycle.
Hmm.
Just it's really really hard to ignore
Sure.
or repress, right? You can't stop it. Again, unless right there's some kind of
There are extreme
physical
measures
problems and yeah, they're extreme measures,
provided
right?
by technology,
Technology,
but
yeah.
not really
Yeah,
provided by
you can go
nature.
on the yeah, you could go on the pill and and that can kind of downplay that, although that tends to have its own really problematic side effects.
Sure.
But yeah, but just the natural experience, right? Yeah, of most women is that kind of this like very cyclical thing. Actually, in the Middle Ages, this is getting kind of like historical here, right? But in the Middle Ages, because of maybe that's not quite right. I don't know if I want to say it's causal, but in the Middle Ages, women are actually viewed as being more associated with the body and being more sexual
Yeah.
than men are.
Yep.
Whereas in later periods, Victorian era and even in our era in a lot of ways, right, it's the opposite. Men are seen as more sexual.
Right.
And women are seen as kind of this is especially like Victorian, right? But these ethereal creatures who are more delicate and refined
And not
more
subject to
disassociated from the
carnal
body
desire.
and not subject to carnal desire.
Right.
And I think that attitude has really deeply influenced our views on modesty and our views on dress.
Okay, so let's bring this around. So the Victorian attitudes about men as being sort of in this constant state of carnal readiness has basically dictated a lot of obligation onto the part of women that to reduce it to a formula again, because men's desire is a constant. Therefore, on the other side of the equation, we need to be making changes in order to account for that constant.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, right. We need women to cover up. And it's not a burden for women because they're these angelic creatures who don't experience the same kind of sexual temptations and sexual desires that men do. And so, out of their great generosity and love, they can condescend, help men out in this area, kind of a thing.
They can dine to help men rise above.
That's right. It's exactly right. Their own, inescapable embodiment, kind of a thing. I don't know that anyone in the contemporary world is putting it right in quite those terms.
Right, but cultures
Right.
bleed into
But
each other, and our
they
modern
very much do.
culture is in some ways inherited
They very
Right. I
much
mean,
do.
even in what was it, 2005? Yeah. That movie Hitch, right, where Will Smith's character and Ava Lopez's character have this conversation about like, well, of course, when you're here at the bar, you need to deal with a bunch of men who are only thinking about one thing, right? And that's 2005, so that would be what, 150 years after the Victorian era, or 120 at least.
Yeah, right. C.S. Lewis says something like, um, we pass through historical periods, but it's not quite like a train passing through a station, right? Where you just like keep on going, right? But you carry it with you.
Right.
Yeah, as
Sort
you
of pick up the atmosphere.
you pick it up and you take it with you. And right, yeah, that's exactly. I think it's such a great example of, yeah, men are only thinking about one thing.
Right.
And from the medieval perspective, certainly from the like clerical medieval perspective or the philosophical medieval perspective or the ancient perspective, again in like the philosophical tradition, it would be no, right, men are more capable of rationality and they're more capable of self-control than women are, right? They're higher than women, so it's not that men aren't just thinking about one thing. Men are thinking, right, they're thinking philosophically, they're thinking rationally, and they have a greater capacity to exercise that reason. Women are a very inconvenient. Women are very inconvenient in this project. Sometimes there's a great, how great is exactly the word there. Well, there's a moment
There's a moment that crystallizes.
that crystallizes. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, yeah, the moment in the Confessions where Augustine and some of his friends. This is pre-conversion, so pre-book 8 garden scene, Tolle ad lege. Before that, where Augustine and his friends are talking about basically establishing a commune, right, where they would retreat from public life and they would go to this friend's country villa and engage in contemplative and philosophical society. And then Augustine has this like great line where he's like, but we forgot about the wives. Right, like some of the guys who are dreaming of this commune thing have wives. It's like, yeah, we kind of forgot about them. Right. So women are kind of inconvenience for that philosophical friendship community project type of a thing. And so it eventually falls apart. I mean, it completely falls apart. There's probably other reasons that it fell apart. Probably it was a ridiculous idea to begin with, but it sort of fizzles out. Right? So there's this sense that, yeah, women can be a kind of distraction from that. So we don't.
I think I speak for most men when I say we've all been distracted from philosophy by women.
And that's good.
Right.
Yeah. And
Okay, but right, the
I'm
difference is
distracted from philosophy, right, by a boy.
right. Your point is,
Yeah.
thus and so should it be. Perhaps what was going on with some of Augustine's circle was, here we are chained to our carnal side, and women are at the other end of that chain.
That's right. Yeah, they
Right.
are carnality, right? Our desire for women is an expression of our carnality. It's an expression of the fact that we can't just be rational bodies. And that may be a little bit unfair to Augustine, that may be putting it a little too strongly, but I think that is it's present in his thinking, it's present in late antiquity, it's present in the philosophical tradition.
That
Right, that our carnality is a problem.
Yeah.
We would like to transcend our own carnality. And because women are so tightly connected to that carnality, and as women equal sex, or women equal procreation, right? We could make it,
Try to soften it up a bit.
yeah, it's not just objectification, it's utilitarianism, whatever. Therefore, they're this reminder of our, like the chains, like you were saying, right? The chains of the body. And so they're very inconvenient that way. I think Augustine, says that women for friendship, a man is much better. Like rational philosophical friendship, women don't meet that need, right? They're right for like, the procreative, generative continuation of the species type of a thing. But if we're just thinking about friendship and in the rational meeting of mind, it's like, yeah, men are much better for that, for each other. There's something inconvenient, right, about that. As opposed to, again, hylomorphic unity. Say, right, actually, wait, could there be a meeting of minds and of bodies, both? Like, is that possible for two human beings to have that kind of
We have the yin and the yang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think we all have to be human, and to be an observant human is to witness all of the ways in which this relationship does go wrong, right? So everyone from Augustine to the modern day, if they are observant, have they know women who have been perhaps even maritally raped. On the other hand, the term pussy whipped also exists for a reason, right? Because there have been men who are like, golly, they can't do anything without, they've lost all agency themselves, right? So unfortunately, in this fallen world, there's always plenty of evidence that this relationship does go wrong. And when things go wrong, it's easy to say, well, wouldn't it be nice if we were just detached? Right.
yeah, it would make it a lot
Yeah,
simpler.
that anchor has pulled us into the wrong reef. Wouldn't it be nice if we could just cut the anchor off? Well, no, maybe we need to put our anchors down in the right spot.
Right.
But that's harder.
It's harder. Yeah, it's a totally understandable impulse. Yeah, I get it. There have been
Yeah.
times where I'm like, man, I just wish I didn't have a body.
Yeah.
Or like, I really have to like feed myself again. Really? Again?
Mm.
It's so annoying. I don't want to feed myself again. I just fed myself like 4 hours ago.
Right. Yeah.
It'd be so much easier if I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
I was stuffed. I thought I'd never eat again.
And now
here I am 4 hours later being like, well, that steak does look pretty juicy.
it's really yummy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's so true.
Yeah. Go to the store and cook. I mean, I don't go to the store and cook. My husband does. So
You got it made in the shade.
Actually, I do. Right. Exactly.
Tiffany.
I do. Yeah. Really. Yeah. I shouldn't complain.
What? I have to eat this meal someone else prepared again? You're living the dream. You're off the grid.
Totally. I totally am. Yes. Yes, I hit the jackpot for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. In terms of partners, absolutely.
Yeah. Shout out to Aaron.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Man, there's. Okay, go ahead, Tom.
I have a question. So I read this article that Renju shared with me, and it was talking about like a little bit asking the question like, what are women sexually drawn to in men? Because we men know what we're drawn to, but it was kind of like putting in our mind, what are women looking for? And he said that a three-piece suit on a man is kind of like the equivalent on a bikini on a girl. And I was curious what your thoughts were on this, because I read that and I was a little shocked. I was like, oh. But it kind of makes sense because you don't really see women look at guys that are shirtless the same way guys look at girls that way. At least I haven't seen that. Maybe they're just very subtle about it. So I just wanted to see what your thoughts were, because I was pretty shocked when I read that.
I do think that women are discouraged socially from either directly expressing their attraction or even acknowledging their attraction to the male body.
Themselves, even.
To themselves. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly right. If you internalize the messages about, I'm an angel, like I'm just associated from my body type of thing, or, men are more sexual, obviously it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. Like, just these just stories that we have are so powerful in the way that stories can even start to like shape and even right distort our own experiences and our our own identity our yeah,
Where we're
it's
actively trying to
powerful.
convince ourselves that one thing is
That's
more
more
attractive
good
than
than
the
the other.
other.
We may not even be actively we may not even be consciously realizing right that we're doing it,
Mm,
right? It's just kind of it's there.
right.
So like, yeah, sex is for men, and right, men are more sexually attracted to women, obviously. So, right, yeah, therefore. So I think that does contribute to the the lack of kind of observable, like, yeah, the kind of subtlety there that you were talking about, because yeah, like most women that I've talked to who are in touch with themselves, right, and in touch with their own sexuality and acknowledge it, are like, yeah, right, like a really ripped guy without a shirt on, I'm gonna notice.
Hmm.
I'm gonna be drawn to, right? I'm gonna be attracted to that for sure.
The three-piece suit is probably a proxy for other things. It implies a certain amount of professional
Yeah, yeah,
future,
yeah.
which in self,
Confidence, power. But I mean, the thing with like a suit there is it's got to be well fitted, right? It actually has to conform to the body. It actually does display the body in a way. There's an ill-fitting suit on a guy. I don't know if you guys have seen this, right? Homeschool boys who go to dances and they're wearing a suit that's like two sizes too big. I don't know, it's the suit that they found at Goodwill or whatever. Maybe that doesn't happen
whoa,
here.
whoa, hold on, Tiffany.
Yeah.
St. Vincent's thrift shop. Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
that's
We
very
we shop at the
Catholic.
Catholic.
That's very Catholic.
Yeah, yeah. Goodwill is for them.
We're dropping by Vinny's.
Yeah. This homeschool prom sponsored by St. Vincent's. Yeah. Get your
That's right.
suit that's
That's right.
older
There
than
you go.
you. Yeah.
St. Francis wore this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's the Catholic version, there's Protestant version, but like the oversized bulky suit that is not at all tailored for
Your
that
body.
guy's particular body, not attractive, even if it was a three-piece suit.
Sure.
No way. Yeah, so it has to be a well-fitted, well-tailored suit that shows the beauty of the body.
Mm.
Like that's I think a big part of it. When do men, I mean, and maybe just right, people in general in the modern context wear a lot of well-tailored stuff. If you're a Hollywood actor, actress, and you're going to the Oscars or whatever, like then you might get a dress that's like perfectly tailored. And when it is, my gosh, right, it's beautiful. If you've ever seen, a dress that is just like perfectly tailored to that woman's body, it's beautiful. That doesn't happen very often. So, right, when you get a three-piece suit that's perfectly fitted, yeah, right, it is. It's very, very attractive. So I think it is both a kind of proxy for other things, but I do also think it is actually about the appearance of the body, because it does actually it has to fit well. My husband has had some suits that like don't fit him at all, and like I hate this.
Take that off.
Yeah, I don't like this. This is terrible. This is awful. Right?
We need to get in our time
You can't do this.
machine.
You look like a homeschool,
Yeah.
teenager.
Right, exactly. We
Which
need to
you
get
were
in
at
our
one point,
time
but-
machine, go back to the 11th century and talk to women back then and be like, so what did you think of Harold's robes? Big, voluminous, non-belted. Yeah. Yeah.
But he had those tight stockings.
He had those tight stockings. Yeah.
Hmm.
Haradrim. Yeah. Haradrim was looking pretty fly in his tight stockings.
Tight stockings. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Actually, like large calves were considered sexually attractive and
Yeah.
and desirable.
Well, as always, it was Father James who blew us out of the water with saying that, was it the 1400s? There was considerable public scandal about young men showing too much leg.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? You're serious? Like, oh yeah. Yeah, the uproar of the day was how much thigh and buttock the young men were putting on display.
See?
It's sort of referenced in A Man for All Seasons when Henry shows his leg to Meg, like look at that there. That's a dancer's leg. But I can throw. And then he points one of his courtiers, like, but I can throw. Yeah, yeah,
Ooh, female gaze there.
yeah. The females, yeah, right. King Henry VIII inviting the female gaze. Yeah,
Started the whole thing.
yeah, exactly. Started, yeah.
Henry VIII, man.
Henry the
Yeah, started a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Right. We can all blame goes back to Henry VIII.
That's right. Yep.
He really destroyed.
Protestant, right? A whipping boy
Yeah.
for both.
Right, exactly. Right.
It's just, it's very, very inconvenient that your church starts that way.
Sure.
You would like a more illustrious, a more
Yeah.
holy
You wanted a more upstanding
origin
citizen.
story. Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, for your etiology.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Oh, let's take a quick break.
The child, right, is her job is to take care of the child. So
Yep.
she's going to be distracted and pulled away by the kid,
Yep.
away from her duties, responsibilities, whatever, to tend to the man.
Mm.
And so that's going to create this sense of rivalry with the kid. And as opposed to, no, we are in this project together. Right? We are partners. Both of us here. We're equally involved in the creation of this child.
Yep.
Maybe not, well, certainly, obviously, biologically, not equally involved in the carrying and bearing of this child, but equally involved in the making of this kid. Half the DNA, right, belongs to the man. And so we're partners, like when we're on the same side together, caring for our child, who, and the caring for this child actually can strengthen and deepen this relationship. And I'm not saying that's easy, straightforward, or, I'm not trying to sugarcoat things or romanticize it. I know like how difficult it can be to adjust to having a kid
Sure.
in a relationship or just like in your life.
Right.
Right. It's a big thing.
Right.
It's a big thing.
All of a sudden, you have this tiny thing with a huge demands.
Oh my gosh, yes, that's right. Yes, and so much stuff. It's all big, right? Like it's utterly disproportionate. Again, it's like math, right? The size of the things and the number of things that you need is utterly in inverse proportion to the size of the child, right? The tinier the child, the more things you need, and the bigger those things are.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's weird.
I think there's been an industry that's grown up around it. Yeah. To absorb American dollars. Right. I mean, if you look at indigenous cultures, the amount of equipment they use to care for their young is fractional compared to ours. Yeah. This is me just wondering aloud. It appears that men's testosterone levels do drop upon the arrival of children, but I wonder if a steady diet of pornography somehow artificially inflates that, which might lead to some of the worst conflicts between men's sexual appetite and mothers' ability to participate in that. I have no outside source to corroborate that. I'm trying to connect some dots here.
I have heard that actually pornography drops your testosterone.
Okay.
I've heard that as well, but I haven't actually seen any kind of research
Right. I don't know.
substantiating that. But yeah, I think that can happen, right? That you find, at the very least, right, you can find sexual satisfaction through that voyeurism as opposed to sexual satisfaction from an actual encounter with another human being in their full embodiment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of disappointment there, probably because your vision or your narrative or your story of what sex is really shaped by pornography. And so, which is in general a deeply and profoundly unrealistic depiction
Mhm.
of sex and deeply and profoundly unrealistic depiction of women, of the women's body, of women's sexual desire or lack thereof. And so when reality doesn't correspond to that, it's disappointing. And in porn, you're we don't have a partner, right? There's not a partnership at all. But that the object of desire or satisfaction makes no demands on you, asks nothing from you. And you're not, of course, you're not trying to give the woman in the, pornographic video or image or whatever an orgasm. She's focused on your orgasm. So it just kind of fundamentally alters your understanding of how sex works. And yeah, again, I don't know if it's affecting testosterone levels, but it is certainly affecting your desire for an actual human being, right? With a real body with whom you're having a real experience.
Yeah.
There's something interesting is apparently I think across the world we're at the lowest point of sexual encounter than any recorded time.
Our birth rate would certainly align with that idea.
And I was just listening, it was Jordan Peterson talking about it, and he was saying that he thinks it's because a lack of heroism. Just an interesting take on it. But he was saying that there's nothing really heroic about sitting in a basement watching pornography. He said there is something very heroic about giving yourself enough that a woman wants to be with you.
I mean, it's risky. It requires vulnerability. Obviously, there's a way of having sex with a human being that doesn't require vulnerability, right? Rape is a real thing, and even just like kind of cold and distant sex is a real thing. But fully giving yourself to another human being is scary. It's hard. It does take courage and trust and a kind of abandonment there that it is a full-bodied experience and a full, like a full, again, a kind of a hylomorphic experience, right? When you're I think fully entering into the sexual experience, and that's a lot. People have been hurt of course, right, by other people, and they've been sexually hurt by other people, right? Sex can feel like very scary for people, and right, not just for women. It's probably more often for women, but I think that's the case for men too. That it can just be this very scary thing, or at least the idea of sex that involves emotional vulnerability, right, as well as a physical encounter.
Right. As opposed to the way in which people have in the past tried to silo it. Right. Do you remember those what culture had them? I want to say this was in England. They had the I think they called them like nuptial sheets. They were sheets with holes in them. And the idea was like the two of you would stay on each side of your sheet. But you had
Why?
you had to allow for the for the world to be peopled, but there would be this separation that was never broken, right? You would never see the other person. They were on the other side of the sheet. Yeah.
That sounds terrible.
I don't know if they were used all that often. Maybe they were just like a fad. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Hopefully the normal, healthy human desire to be united to the body of someone else and to the heart and the mind of someone else, like maybe overcame some of those things. Hopefully. Yeah. I'm not sure. Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, someone made money selling nuptial sheets, whatever they were called. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We've always had trouble with the fullness of being both the body and the soul, and that plays out in sex as well. Right. To fully be right, to be there fully, right, as a complete person can be really, really challenging, right? Really difficult to do, really scary. There's a lot of things that can hold us back. But I think right when that full person is there, that's that's what true sex is.
Mm.
And I think that's that Edenic version of it, like the union with another human being that involves the union of the bodies but the union of whole persons in a vulnerable giving of yourself to another and an ecstatic admiration, worship, and wonder of the other person, right, that's involved in it.
What do you think you would say to a girl if she were to come to you and say, "Look, Tiffany, like by by dint of my genetic inheritance, I'm always going to be plain. I'm always going to be heavier than is currently fashionable. Or even something worse, perhaps they do have a deformity of some kind, a real deformity. Like, what do you think, and if they came to you and are like, I don't see how I could ever be uh, sexually attractive. Like, what do you think you would say to them?
I think I would draw on what Tom was saying earlier in our conversation, that attractiveness is not just about the body, right? But it's that, right, the union of the self, right, with the physical expression, and so that that confidence in who you are and that security in your worth and your value, right, is an incredibly beautiful thing.
Mm.
And that actually can manifest itself in the physical realm. And so people who, like you were saying, Tom, right, aren't conventionally, artistically, whatever,
Hot.
strictly, yes, the most beautiful, right? Yeah. The most hot people have a kind of, right, like power, right? And aura about them that we're drawn to. Because as it turns out, we have these myths about guys being super shallow, but those myths may exist, right, for reasons, and maybe they're pointing to some sort of truth. But again, as it turns out, men are also hylomorphic unities, and they are drawn to human beings.
Mm.
They're not just drawn to bodies.
Mm.
They
Yeah,
want a woman who is a full human being and not just, right, yeah, conventionally hot.
yeah, it's um like when you see pictures of like girls on Instagram, and if she looks like a girl that's just trying to get your attention with her body, you're like, ugh. You're like, I don't really expect you to like engage in a meaningful way, but you're more like, I just want to throw myself at you and hopefully something will work. Whereas others that have that look like they have a really good personality and are pretty, then it's like, oh, it gets your attention.
Mm.
And I think there's something similar, right, going on for women too. There are definitely guys I look at it and think, wow, right, he is hot, but he gives off really shallow vibes, right?
Mm,
Or does not seem like a safe person.
mm,
Very attractive, but he's got some really unhealthy views of women or really unhealthy views of sexuality. There's just a lot, right? There's a lot there. So, yeah. But someone who is emotionally mature, who's safe, and there I don't mean, oh, he's just a nice guy, but right, a safe person to be with, like someone that you can trust, that you can rest easy in, that kind of person. I think, yeah, right, that draws us too. And I wouldn't want to say to this girl, right, just that your worth or your value or your attractiveness, right, resides in men being attracted to you. So I just want to kind of like add to my answer there. Right? It's not just, oh, right, don't worry, sweetie. Boys also like girls with personalities, so it's okay. It's okay. Uh, but that right, you yourself can love and admire and worship and be attracted to who you are. Right? I think there's a way of being attracted to yourself that doesn't have to be autoeroticism or narcissism, but that is acknowledging the reality of the image of God within yourself and the particular manifestation of it. So it's not just a generic, like, yes, I am made in the image of God.
God
but,
loves me, whatever that means.
Right, God loves me. But in the particular ways that manifests, the particularity of who I am, I can love that. I can embrace that. I can see it as a real good.
Right.
I
And a
think,
particular good.
and a particular good.
Right.
Mhm.
Not
Yeah.
because this is the divine daycare. God has promised to take care of everyone in it. No, it's a particular good. God loves you in a particular way. That's not just him saying, well, I put myself under obligation to these humans. So
My moral Kantian duty is
right. Kantian duty.
the moral imperative is this. Yes.
Give you breath.
The categorical imperative, right? That's what that is. Yes, exactly. Is to give you breath. Yeah. Yeah, but right, God theoretically could have made everybody with the exact same kind of body and the exact same personality type, and he chooses not to. And he could have made a world. I think maybe this is not right. I'm not a theologian. This may not have been in accord with his nature, but I suppose right, he would have the power to make a world in which there is just like utter uniformity. There's no variety. There's no distinction. There's no diversity. There's no dappled things, as Hopkins talks about. But he did make that kind of world.
Yep.
Yeah, so he delights in dappled things. He delights in oddities and idiosyncrasies. That which is idiosyncratic. He does. That's part of the goodness, right, of the created world. So I think embracing that within yourself. And I think I would also add, if we're talking about a physical disability, I do think that lament is an appropriate response.
Lament.
Yeah, I don't think that you just have to say, my body is beautiful and it's great, and I'm so glad that like back to
I'm
my
so glad
my
I'm in
dad.
a wheelchair.
I'm so glad that I can't do all of the things that I was able to do when I was a young man. My dad was such a athletic and physical person who enjoyed being outside and enjoyed doing physical things with his body. Again, that was a real good, and that's a real good that's been lost. So I think it is okay, and in fact, actually healthy for him to respond with lament and say, this is not actually part of God's original design for things. And this is not like the resurrected body is not this.
Right.
There are real benefits, a real wisdom, right? Real growth that has happened. That can happen through the kind of limitations, right, of the body through chronic
sort of
illness, and things like
integration
that.
of your limitations into your view of the world.
Into the view of the world, right? Yeah, I think there's real wisdom to be gained there. That doesn't mean though that you have to say, "This is good. I love this." In an ideal world, this is what I would choose. I think you can still say, "This sucks. It sucks that I have this chronic illness, or it sucks that I've got an acute condition. It's not okay. I'm angry about it. I'm sad about it. Right? I'm grieving over it." Right? And so I think having that kind of twofold response is really important.
Yes.
And part of being healthy. You don't want to
You don't want to
deceive yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to pretend
Yeah.
that you're not feeling the emotions that you're feeling.
It's just a flesh wound.
Yeah. That there's only certain. Yeah, you see this all the time. Yeah, someone will have their heart broken. Like, well, this is actually good. This is what I needed. I was totally head over heels and ready to marry this girl yesterday, but since she broke up with me this morning, now I need to force this narrative that I see that this was actually what was supposed to happen.
Now I have all this time to focus on God.
Right.
Great.
No, give yourself a break and say you're heartbroken.
And maybe you get to a place where you say, "Oh, okay, I think it was good that we
Right.
broke up. We weren't right for each other." Timing was off.
You're allowed to have a year before that happens.
That's right. You are allowed to grieve.
It doesn't have to be this afternoon. She broke up with you over coffee. You paid for.
Ooh.
Yeah. But wait, we didn't decide how many buttons are needed on a blouse.
What is a blouse?
What is a blouse? What is a blouse? Yeah.
How many angels can dance on the head of a pin?
How many?
I
Right.
think,
Right.
I think that question is up there, right? With
It's
this.
very-
What is a blouse?
Yeah.
Ontological mystery.
It seems that in some of our conversations, both here, but but also leading up to this, before this episode, you've been frustrated with perhaps some of the approaches institutions as well as individuals take towards questions of modesty and dress. Is it because of the sort of forced specificity? 2 finger lengths below the knee, 3 finger lengths below the collarbone. Like, is it the specificity that really drives you nuts? Is it the single axis of what's covered and what's not covered versus also what's appropriate for in your profession, the classroom, but you could also talk about a professional setting or all sorts of things. Is it, do you feel that the specificity is frustrating, that there's only a single axis by which we're judging things? Is there other stuff that you're finding frustrating?
Yes, to all of that.
Yes.
I think the specificity and the single axis are connected, at least in my mind.
Okay.
The specificity seems to exist because of the single axis. So because we're thinking about dress in terms of covering up and modesty, which is a abstract noun that we are then trying to concretize and say, this is what modesty is. Let us now.
This is modest.
This is
That
modest.
is not.
2 inches is modest, but 3 inches, whew. Clearly, you've crossed the line
Right.
into immodesty. Yeah, let's apply mathematical precision to something that does not admit of mathematical precision. It's maybe part of what I would object to there. But I do think that the specificity and the single axis there are connected. Like, okay, so we're so focused on this that then that's going to manifest itself in these very particular, very it seems like very arbitrary kinds of rules.
Sure.
Yeah. The reason that I'm concerned about the single access, or one of the reasons I'm concerned, right, about the single access, is because so often that single access is hyper focused on women.
Okay.
So it's all of these specifics are not all, that's not fair, but many of the specifics, right, seem like especially geared towards the female body. Yeah. And it's the female body that is the location of modesty. Like, that's where does modesty happen? Where does modesty take place? Where are we thinking about modesty? Female body, right? And so that's where we need to have all these rules about. And
okay, so
often that's not happening.
Men's dress
male
code
body.
is 6 paragraphs. Women's dress code is 6 volumes.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yeah, and that has happened.
That's going on the presumption again that men have more sexual thoughts than women.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so it's really tied up in what we think about human sexuality.
Right.
Yeah. Men are more sexual than women. They have more sexual thoughts. And one effective way to address those sexual thoughts is to make women cover up. Right. Some dress codes and some ways of thinking about this question are maybe thinking about it more in a mutual perspective, right? That women also have sexual thoughts too. And so dress is a way of helping, right? Like address, that was not an intended pun there, right? But address the problem of sexuality, right? And of sexual thoughts. It's just in general, the tendency is to focus on the female body as the thing that needs to be covered up, and then less so on the male body. And so that's a problem. It's not just an abstract, like philosophical problem, like I'm, making a category error here of, I've got the general category, sexual beings, and men appear under that category and women don't, or like women are sort of partially in that category, but men are totally in that category. But it also profoundly affects the lived experience of women and their own relationships with their bodies and their own relationships with their sexuality. Right? If you internalize the narrative that your body is a temptation, your body is a problem, and your body is to be covered up, of course it's going to affect the way that you view your body. Like, well, my body is a problem. And that for some women can continue into marriage too. It's not as if you can just easily flip a switch. Human beings aren't machines. And so to like totally flip the script, and enter into a new narrative, like, oh, I see. No, now my body is good and beautiful and ought to be attractive to someone. It's not an immediate thing, and for some women, where there's something that they struggle with for a really long time, too. And that's not just because of dress code. So I don't want to say it's all down to dress codes, but I think dress codes are a part of that, and especially dress codes that come out of that kind of attitude with those kinds of assumptions behind them, are contributing to that. But I think they're contributing to a post-fall relationship with your body. That severing, right, of the self and the body there. Like, my body and my sexuality is a bad thing, and I need to
Sort of has to be
repress it.
corralled.
Has to be corralled. Has to be covered up. And then I get married, and then I don't have to corral it. But like, wait a minute, how do I undo that kind of story, right? That kind of message there.
You can only uncorral it to your husband. You have to corral it.
And you got to keep correct. That's right, exactly. Keep corralling it over here, but not over here. What? And obviously, I think women are intelligent beings who are capable of holding nuanced thoughts. That there are ways of being a body that are appropriate in this setting with this person, that are not appropriate in this setting, right, with this person. But to think of it as, right, I'm corralling my body in this area, and then I'm not corralling my body in this area, right? That's profound cognitive dissonance there. I am sexual being. It's just part of who I am. Like, right. And human sexuality is most, right, it's at its highest, right? It's at its most beautiful and fulfilling when it's in a mutual relationship of trust, of mutual vulnerability, right? Of mutual giving. That's the highest expression, right, of it. And so that's why we say that sexuality, right, is most appropriate for, or not sexuality, right, but just like the act of sex is most appropriate for marriage, not because, right, I'm a danger, but like, here we'll have a ring, so like it's an okay kind of danger there, right? Because actually it's the best when it doesn't involve coercion, right, or marital rape, or any of those distortions, which are very much there and present and sadly very common. When it doesn't involve those things, right, it is the highest expression of that, and right, like, so that's why say it's in this context. But when you're outside of marriage and interacting with other men, it is actually, right, also still okay to think, I am a body, and I have confidence in my body, and I enjoy being a body, and I can be beautiful, and I can actually be attractive to other men. That's an okay thing. And I can be attracted to other men. I don't mean that I, again, right, desire to sexually right, be sexually united, right, or possess, right, or
To say
conquer.
that you recognize the attractiveness of other men does not mean I'm pursuing them
Right. No.
due to their attraction.
No. Yeah. No. We'll just be like, yeah, that person is attractive. That statue is attractive.
Right.
And again, right, that sounds like very kind of cold, right? But that hylomorphic unity, right, is also very attractive too.
You're
Right.
kind of just like saying that's a good looking Chad, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Chad, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like, right. Yeah, we're drawn to beauty as humans. Right. We just are.
And it's sort of stuffing ourselves when we try to pretend we're not drawn to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
I've had this thought for a while. I mean, I understand people can be spoiled, especially in their youth, if they possess great beauty. Like pretty privilege, I think, is real. But on the same time, it's like there's a way in which human beings when we see a beautiful person, we recognize that there's something that they've been perhaps endowed with beyond their merit, right? What do they do to merit that? Nothing, perhaps. But nonetheless, they've been endowed with something that sort of demands our respect, right? And like, I hate to say, like, oh, yeah, we should indulge people's pretty privilege, right? Or we should let pretty people have easier lives. I don't want to say those things, but I do want to hold in tension the idea that people need to be treated as individuals and treated to a degree upon on their merits, but also in recognition that sometimes they've been given a gift that's just astounding, and maybe we should behave a little differently in the presence of an astounding gift. And one of those gifts is physical beauty.
Yeah, I wonder if there
I
is.
don't. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wonder if there's an analogy to physical prowess
Mm,
and someone who is incredibly gifted in a particular sport.
mm,
And there that person has to exercise a lot of discipline. There's like a lot of active virtue there, but still there is this gift that has been given to them too. Like I think it's I could practice soccer for hours and hours and hours, right? I'm never going to be a professional soccer player.
mm.
I played soccer, so it's pretty much the only sport I care about. So that's the one that I think about. It's not I don't
That's the one.
not I'm not a very good American that way.
But that's the one. That's the one in
that's the
which you recognize your limits.
Yeah, I recognize my limits and I appreciate the beauty, right, and the excellence of those players, right, who have it, right? And I do. I'm like, wow, that's astonishing. Do I think that those soccer players should be given a free pass, right, if they are in a DUI, right, or they assault someone? Or I'm actually watching women's sports, so like I'm sure that comes up, but maybe not quite as much. But if it were to happen, I don't think they should get a pass on those things, right? Because they've got that skill or that
Mm,
quality. But to your point, there is something just incredibly wondrous about it.
mm.
You think, wow, that is amazing, right? We should worship excellence.
Right.
We should worship beauty when we see it.
Right.
We pervert that so easily, obviously, and that does become that pretty privilege thing. Like,
Yeah. I mean, I
cute,
remember like
you know,
this is
do what you want.
an amalgamation of conversations I've had, but I would summarize it as saying like, if you saw just some guy walking down the side of the road, would you pull over and offer him a ride? Probably not. If you saw a hot girl walking down the side of a road, would you pull over and offer her a ride? Yeah. Yeah, probably. Definitely, actually. And it's like, well, is that just because she's hot? No, it's not just because she's hot. Like, yes, there's the social vulnerability, right? A young woman might be targeted in ways that a man isn't. That is true.
That's my first thought.
And perhaps it should be your
As a
first
woman,
thought.
maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Perhaps that should be your first thought. But my point is maybe there's also something about like they possess a gift that deserves a little extra protection.
But if she's not hot, and she's in that kind of vulnerable position, I don't think that should make any difference.
No. That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay. I haven't integrated this fully then.
Maybe.
Yeah. Roll down your window. Are you above a 6? No, I'm out of here.
Yeah, that seems to violate
Right, no, that's not right either.
Christian,
Yeah.
Good Samaritan kind of thing there. I think we do often act that way. It's like dead white girls are especially interesting and get a lot of attention.
Sure.
Right. I think that's probably kind of similar dynamic there.
Right. What's that movie? Vengeance. Yeah. The guy convinces his producer to let him do an unplanned investigation. And the producer's like, so who is it? And he says, dead white girl, holy grail of podcasts. And she's like, yeah, that'll do. Okay. Like, and do this unplanned project. Right. And they're mocking it, but they're mocking something true.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, it is very much there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's I think there's some sort of unique response that beauty calls out in us, but maybe getting right precision on what exactly the nature of that response is.
Right. I'm not saying I've worked it out completely in my own mind. I'm just saying I feel like the complaints over pretty privilege, there's something true about them because people can be spoiled by their gifts. But nonetheless.
Do you think it's because we're, being physical beings, physical beauty makes us think of higher things faster?
I think there's something to that.
So it's very platonic.
Well, I was thinking
not in a bad way necessarily, but yeah.
Yeah, like when you're around, like, at least I've had this experience multiple times. When you have a friend, they're very attractive, and then they do formal dress at a ball and they put all their makeup on, and you're like, whoa, and you're like, you start talking to them differently. You're like, I know you're my friend, but right now you feel like a queen.
Right.
And so you're like, but it's probably because it's like the physical beauty is putting into your mind, well, there's something really good here that I should be respecting and loving more. And this is a reminder of what that is, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's this very external expression of the glory of the human being. There, and you're responding to that. And I'm thinking about C.S. Lewis's The Weight of Glory, because he talks about there. He's like, you've never actually encountered any real human being, you've never encountered any merely human being. Everyone that you have encountered is either destined for the perversion of hell. It gets really pretty grim there, or the glory of heaven, right? The glory of that person, and so maybe when it works well, right? When it doesn't lead to I want to sexually consume that person, but I see that beauty there. It is giving us a foretaste of that like paradisal vision of the human person. And yeah, because we are physical beings, because we learn through our senses, when we see a beauty that is just, our senses can't deny that this person is beautiful, like clearly and obviously. And even more beautiful when they have, they put on a lovely dress and they put on makeup, or they've got their perfectly tailored three-piece suit. Like, oh yeah, okay, I see it. It's very obvious to my senses, right? To the embodied part of who I am.
The distractors have been cleared away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, there it is right there. Yep, there it is. If I had that eternal vision, I'd probably see everyone in that way. I think I think that's what's going on in like Paradiso, right? Everyone's like, yes, I want the bodies of everybody. And not in a sexual way, right? But an erotic way. Yeah, because I see everyone, I think, oh my gosh, splendor. Right. Amazing and beautiful. And yeah, maybe right in this life, there just are people who are objectively more beautiful than other people, right? There are lots of people that I like, I don't think, those people are clearly way more beautiful than I am. I'm a pretty average looking person, and that's okay, you know. But
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of those Dove commercials of the early 2000s went off the rails, right? They would pull in some average looking model and then like show the process of the how lights, camera, Photoshop, other effects can make them look like a cover model, right? And Dove was trying to get everyone thinking, well, beauty is sort of this manufactured product that is then used to sell cosmetics. And they had a point. It's not that models on magazines and other places don't get a lot of beauty treatment before they go on camera, and then the photography itself gets treated very heavily. That is true, but it went too far, as is almost always the case, and it turned into this effort to pretend that physical beauty wasn't real and like everyone's equally beautiful, and that just flies in the face of our lived experience. It's like, no, no, it's not.
but but the acknowledgement that some people are more beautiful than other people, right? Or some people are more beautiful than me, or like many people are more beautiful than me, doesn't then have to mean that I am insecure about my body
Mm,
or at war with my body or not at home with my body. I
right.
can say, sure, that model on the runway is, right, conventionally, stereotypically Greek sculpture, conventionally, right, beautiful. And yes, right, yeah, more beautiful than I am, but I can still enjoy my own body, be comfortable in my own body, see my own body as attractive, as being a source of pleasure for myself, right? And for others, and embrace it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's maybe a way of thinking about body positivity. Sometimes probably body positivity does kind of lead to everybody is like equally beautiful, in their own
Right.
way. And as you were saying, I don't think that's actually the case. I think they're just there are people who are more beautiful than other people. Helen of Troy, right, was more beautiful than any other woman. Uh, But that doesn't
Right.
mean that if I'm not Helen of Troy, I can't enjoy my own body and be confident in my
Right,
own
right.
body, which
Body
is maybe what I
body
talked about last week.
confidence is not the exclusive privilege of people of a certain caliber of, okay.
I think
Yeah,
that's a good
that's
way
the
of
walkway
putting
here.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. We're running out of time, but just before we go, like, okay, so we've got this axis of modesty when it comes to dress. You would add the access of like, what's becoming, as in what is appropriate for the pursuit at hand.
Yeah, that's right. And I find appropriateness to be helpful. It it's not gendered. It is an abstract noun. There's no denying that. And so
Appropriateness.
appropriateness, right, is an abstract noun, right? Just like modesty is an abstract noun. And so it's always tricky to figure out how to instantiate and practice abstractions. But what I find helpful for appropriateness in thinking about practicality,
Mm,
personally at least, is that it's relative to the situation. So it allows you to ask, what is the thing that I'm doing here?
mm,
And then, I think you could even ask, right, who am I in this thing that we're doing here? So I'm a professor in the classroom. I'm not a student in the classroom. I am in a classroom. Okay. So, right, what does that mean? So it allows me to be attentive to particular situations and exercise prudence, which is a practical virtue. Right? Prudence is wisdom applied to particular situations. I exercise judgment there. But appropriateness gives me kind of parameters for exercising that judgment. It says, okay, yeah, you're doing this thing. What's appropriate here? You're going on a hike. You're going on a hike with small children. You're going on a hike and then you're going to go kayaking. Right? You're going to go a hike and then you're going to go kayaking and then you're going to, I don't know, what else do you do outdoors? Those are my two big things, right? But then maybe you can do right. You're going to do something else outdoors, and so that might influence and shape the way that you dress. That's very like practical, right? Very functional there. In the classroom, we are thinking about the thing that we're practicing. But our dress there is not, this dress enables me to perform a like particular bodily function. And it's maybe not as clear as it is when I'm outside, but rather
Whereas getting in a wetsuit because I'm going diving.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But I am giving honor to the solemnity of this occasion. And that's not to say that like every classroom experience is this amazing transcendent moment where we all grasp truth in its fullness and walk out of the classroom forever changed. That doesn't happen. That's absurd and ridiculous to think that that's the case. But it is.
We need to be disposed.
We need to be disposed to that. And we're reading text and we're talking about subjects that have the power to transform us, right? And have a seriousness and sacredness and solemnity about them. You can be funny in the classroom. So I'm meaning sacredness and solemnity and seriousness in the sense of they're important and they matter and they're serious. Not that we're all like grim all the time. You can laugh a lot in the classroom. Actually, I think it's really good to laugh in the classroom and bring a kind of spirit of levity there, right? But you're trying to honor that, and so, I think you dress in a certain way. But that doesn't mean that I still express my own individuality when I do that. Think, okay, this is what works for me, or this looks good on my body, or this is what makes me feel good today, or we all have like 20 different personalities inside of us. I don't know, something like that. And so today I woke up and I felt like this kind of person, and so I'm going to dress like this kind of person today. But I can still honor the occasion in that sense, right? Like honoring the occasion doesn't have to mean everyone dresses the same way, that there's utter uniformity there. Or it is a formal occasion and I want to wear a cocktail dress or a ballroom dress. And this particular style makes me feel very confident in my body, right? Or I just love this fabric, or I just like love this color, right? Right? This color does something for my eyes, or my hair, or whatever, and so I'm going to choose that color, and maybe that color would not do the same thing for another person, or, wouldn't make them feel that way, right? And so there's that diversity there, but we're still thinking about this is the occasion and the thing that we're doing, and so we're dressing for that occasion. And I think appropriateness has, right? It has a utilitarian aspect and it has that like leisurely aspect, right? It has what is useful for what I'm trying to do. But then if I'm trying to do something leisurely, something that is something that I'm pursuing for its own sake, and then I'm also thinking about just the aim and the goal of beauty, right? I want to look beautiful. Now, in the classroom, I don't want to wear a ball gown that's too much focus, right, and attention, too much glory and splendor for that classroom setting. Because it's the text, it's the authors. That's where the focus should be. But yeah, in a dance, go for it. Like be the center of attention. Like have all eyes on you. Dress that way. Go for it. That's great. Obviously, low-hanging fruit would be your wedding.
Yeah.
Of course, right, you should be the center of attention. Absolutely. Of course all eyes should be on you, right? Of course you should be the most beautiful, the most decked out, the glitziest person there. Like, of course. Right? That's an okay thing to do. Right? So all the different modes of dress, all the different motivations for why we dress, I think appropriateness allows for. Like yeah, like sometimes I do want to be the center of attention. Sometimes I do want people to look at me. I don't want people to look at me in like, I want to sexually possess, right? Consume, conquer her. I just want people to notice me. I am an agent in the world and I have power and also I have a body and like, right. I want that. And so it's okay to dress that way. Is it okay to dress that way constantly all the time? No. And that's not healthy. Right. There's probably something like there's other things, there's underlying issues going on there, most likely. If I always need to be the center of attention, right, in every single situation that I'm in, red flag.
Right.
But is it sometimes okay for me to be that way? Yeah, sure.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, my wedding, my birthday party.
Sure. Or even a
That's
judge,
okay.
right? A judge's
Yeah,
robes
yeah, there you go. Right, exactly.
command a
Command.
certain formality and
Yeah.
respect.
And that's
If you
okay.
wore those all the time on the street,
It'd be weird.
right?
Be like
uh,
narcissist.
getting a burger.
That's right. Yes, exactly.
Right. But on the flip side, if he showed up and sat down in shorts and a Bermuda shirt, you would say this isn't right either.
But if he were at the beach, totally fine. Right.
And
The
and
Bermuda shorts.
and actually the thing to do.
Then the thing to do. Right, exactly. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the thing to do, right? So, no, I actually don't think that any piece of clothing is wrong. Right? It's just the context that you're wearing it in. Right? Is determines or, yeah, right, is kind of plays a really major role in whether or not that's the thing to wear.
Right.
There is a place, an occasion for, basically, right, every type of dress. But that requires a fair amount of prudence. But I love that because that asks us to grow in virtue. And it asks us to grow in this independent kind of virtue. What I mean by that is this, I have to exercise prudence.
I have to grow in judgment.
I have to grow in judgment. It's not just, I have to follow this rule. And sometimes it is nice to just follow the rule. And there's a place for that too. But
Right. The best rules train us in, actually, why did they always insist on 2 fingers below the knee? That should spark some thought about what is appropriate in a given context. Your frustration comes when the rules are only aligned on a single axis, but also the sense that these rules are here to replace the judgment and prudence of the I don't want to say audience, but I want to say the recipients.
that's right. Yeah. Yeah. And right. Yeah. So the judgment and prudence there. And then the growth in, all right, overcoming our temptation to objectify and reduce the bodies of others. We can, if we have those rules and if we're in a community, right, where other people are following those rules. This is kind of going back to something, a point I made much earlier, but just right, if we have those rules and we're surrounded by people who follow those rules, we can think, okay, I have a handle on this temptation to objectify another human being, but I haven't actually done the work within my own heart to transform the way that I view other human beings. I just think that I've addressed this problem, but I haven't. Right? If I were to go out into a different kind of community, if I were to go to the beach, I would be back where I was. I wouldn't actually have addressed the issue. My virtue would be profoundly dependent on the behavior of other people. And there's a certain extent which like that is true, right? Our virtue is dependent on other people and on our environment, our circumstance, where we're not like this stoic, isolated fortress thing. But our own virtue is a really important part.
Yeah.
Right? Like actually cultivating that virtue within ourselves is incredibly, incredibly important. And I just think it's easy for us, for people to conclude that I have I've actually addressed this problem when I haven't. And so I think I see it, this kind of this twofold. Yeah, it's you are cultivating that prudence, which is the governing virtue of the practical life, right? Of the ethical life. And then you are also cultivating that ability to treat another human being as a full human being, as a hylomorphic unity. And I'm not saying that means that we should all wear bikinis all the time so that we can make that happen. Right? But that just wouldn't be appropriate.
Right.
Right? Setting aside modesty, that just wouldn't be appropriate for a classroom or for Wyoming winters. But being in an environment where the rules aren't doing all the work in virtue for you, right? Like especially in this area, seems to me
Okay.
to be
So perhaps when
really
we create
important
environments,
for maturation.
sit around and just say, well, if we could just come up with more and better rules, the problem would go away. You end up thinking, no, guys, we have the wrong paradigm. It's not more and better rules. There has to be a change of heart and
That's right.
a true training of the mind that it considers the situation at hand.
Mhm. That's right. Yeah, which is profoundly Christian.
Hmm.
Boy, that makes me sound a little bit, or maybe very, very arrogant. I just mean that is what Christ calls us to. It is the transformation of the heart.
Yeah.
Right. It's the external laws of the Old Testament. Right. We're moving into those laws written on the heart, those laws of loving a neighbor and of loving God. And I can follow the external rules, and there is real value to that, right? We need rules. I'm not advocating for anarchy in society. We do need those rules, and I'm grateful for rules. My own personal virtue is by no means perfect, so I'm glad, right, that I have impetuses, and that other people are also corralled by rules. But what we're striving for is that the internalization, right, of that virtue, the internalization of charity, of love, of treating other people as not means to our own ends, or it as objects to be consumed, but as ends in of themselves, as like real full subjects and human beings. And that comes from our hearts. That comes from our this place of love and of understanding what a human being is, and what this particular human being is, and what this particular human being struggles with, and and longs for it, and desires. And like that's the work of virtue. And the laws are they're great. I mean, like I said, we need them, but ultimately we want to be in a place where we don't need laws. And the pre-fallen state, right, the Edenic state, I mean, there's that one rule about eating that fruit, which is a big one, and they do violate. But I always think about Dante when he gets. I just always think about Dante all the time, but about Dante, right, when he gets the top of Mount Purgatory, and Virgil says to him, "I crown and mitre you, Lord over your own soul. Go and do what you will." It's like giving him permission to do whatever he wants. And there Virgil is not saying to him, it doesn't matter, vice, virtue, good, evil, whatever. Just, live, Dante, go and experience. But it's your will has now been shaped and formed and healed. And so now you can do whatever you want to do, because what you want to do is the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And you're not thinking of it as well, now I must obey the rules or I will go to hell. But it's, I desire to do the good.
The good.
Deeply. Yeah. And I love the good, and I want to do the good.
All right. And in that sense, the specificity of your own will then actually guide you to the specific good for which you were created.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And that moment in Paradiso is Dante has come back to Eden.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's at the top of Mount Purgatory is Eden, right? So he's returned to that Edenic state where you can love and do what you will.
Dr. Schubert, thank you much. Yeah. We are unfortunately out of time. It's always a pleasure to have you here. Thanks to you so much for sharing your thoughts on such a wide variety of topics. I'll have to chew on this for a while. Good.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.